Britain's news channel.
There's only three people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on Tuesday the 14th of November. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Andrew Pearce, and Bev Turner.
So Rishi rolls the dice. The Prime Minister's reshuffle has sparked anger from the Tory right. We'll have the very latest.
And Common Sense Czar, the Conservative MP Esther McVey of this parish, of course, will lead the anti-woke agenda in Rishi's new cabinet. Is this a move to appease the right after the sacking of Home Secretary Suella Braverman?
King Charles turns 75 today. He'll use his birthday to launch a new scheme to tackle food poverty, and he's expecting a phone call from Prince Harry.
Do you think it was a phone call from Prince Harry?
You'd always want a phone call from your son,
You would, I suppose, yeah.
Obviously, we were on air yesterday morning. You were with us as all of this drama was unfolding at 10 Downing Street. So we have a lot to unpick. A lot has happened since we came off air at midday yesterday, not least that appointment of Esther McVey. Esther, who you are all very familiar with, her husband Phil, is here. We're going to be asking what it means.
It's all about what does it mean, a common sense Minister for Common Sense.
Yeah, how long have they known? Do you think that's a bit sort of patronising in some way? GBViews at gbnews.com is the email address, or are you just happy to have Esther McVey sat around that table? I, for one, certainly am. First, though, here is your very latest news this morning with Sophia.
Good morning, it's 9:31. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. Ministers have been arriving at Downing Street for the first cabinet meeting since the Prime Minister's dramatic reshuffle, which saw David Cameron make an unexpected return to frontline politics. In a major gamble, Rishi Sunak gave the former Prime Minister a peerage in order to make him Foreign Secretary. Lord Cameron admits such a return is not usual, but says he wants to support Mr Sunak through a difficult job at a hard time. Conservative Party Chairman Richard Holden told GB News that this is positive for the Tories.
I think you can see we've got a very broad church of a Conservative Party. People like me from the north of England, people like David Cameron who've had a huge amount of experience in government from right across the country. And I think it's really good. You can see a strong and united party coming together now for the future. We've got those big aims that the Prime Minister's already outlined, and there'll be some big decisions on those coming up this week.
US President Joe Biden has told Israel the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza must be protected as fighting continues. It comes after the World Health Organization said Gaza's main hospital is no longer functioning. Israel has accused Hamas of having a command and control centre under the hospital, which the terror group denies. Meanwhile, the Israeli military says it is in the process of transferring incubators from a hospital in Israel to Gaza amid fears for newborn babies there. A thunderstorm warning is in effect as heavy rain continues to batter the country. A yellow weather warning is in place for the south of England, with widespread travel disruption expected. Storm Debbie is set to clear, but wet and windy weather will linger. The Environment Agency has also issued 11 flood warnings. And you can get more on all those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com. Now, it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Very good morning. It's 9:33. We have got a lot to digest after the action of yesterday.
Certainly have, because the reshuffle, the recriminations continue. Rishi Sunak is predictably facing a backlash from right-wing Tories, not just over the sacking of Suella Braverman's Home Secretary, but bringing back the former Prime Minister and arch Remainer David Cameron, now Lord Cameron, as Foreign Secretary.
Dame Andrea Jenkins, a prominent Boris Johnson supporter, sent a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister and accused him of deciding to, as she says, purge the centre-right from his cabinet, and said that Mrs Braverman was the only person in the cabinet with the courage to speak the truth of the appalling state of our streets and a two-tier policing system.
And in a surprise appointment, GB News presenter and Tory MP Esther McVey was appointed as the Common Sense Minister, tasked with leading the anti-woke agenda. She will be operating from the Cabinet Office. We don't quite know what this move means, but we're going to be talking to her husband, Philip Davies, also of this parish, who can hopefully shed some light.
So is this just a move to appease the right of the party after sacking Suella Braverman? Let us know what you think at home, gbviews@gbnews.com. What do you make of it, Mr
Well, political reshuffles are all about balance. So if you get rid of a hard line, well, let's not call a hard line. She spoke for the common sense view of the British people on policing and on the march at the weekend. If you get rid of Suella Braverman, you've got to put someone back into the jigsaw that sort of fits the bill. Now, Esther McVey is outspoken. She's on the right, but her role is not in the same league as Home Secretary, which is one of the great four offices of state. She's Minister of State who has access to the cabinet, so she's not a fully fledged cabinet minister. But look, I think Esther McVey is great. She's great news. We'll miss her here on GB News, and if anyone can talk common sense in the cabinet, it's her. But we've yet to work out quite how this job pans out.
I don't know whether the public are sufficiently stupid to think that they see this as just balance. I bestow the British public with more intelligence than this, because it's so obvious that they've just gone, right. We've got head boy of Winchester College as Prime Minister. We've got former Eton David Cameron in one of the top jobs. Who's like a normal person? Oh, I know. We'll get Esther. She's on the telly and people like her, which is true. People do like her and she is on the telly. But I think if you're going to... It just feels like give her something meaningful. Don't just give Esther the common sense minister. Like, if you genuinely believe that people like Esther have something to offer, give her a top job. Don't just get her there as a sort of tokenistic, oh, well, just, like, keep the red wall a bit happy because she's got a northern accent.
If she makes a fist of it, though, if she makes a success of this job, and it's for her to make a success of it, she could become a major figure, because there is too much wokery in government. How much money, how many times have I read that the Department of Health is going to stop Health Trust spending thousands and thousands of pounds on these wretched diversity schemes? The NHS must be the most diverse employer on the planet, and yet they're still spending millions. Is that the sort of stuff she's going to put a stop to? I hope so.
Well, I hope so, but how can you judge whether she's going to be a success with a portfolio, well, no portfolio, but with the title as the Minister for Common Sense? How do you judge common sense? It's like satire. When she's, some of the MPs talking about it so far, saying that, you know, she's anti-wokery, but they have to define what they mean by that. I mean, I know what you're saying about diversity and inclusion possibly is coming under that heading, but you know, if they genuinely wanted to push back on what we would see as wokery, make her the Minister for Free Speech, because that's what a lot of it is about. Is you can't say this, you can't say that. If you genuinely believe, Prime Minister, and we know that they have GBNews on in number 10 during the day, and that's probably where they saw Esther's brilliance and realised that she had so much to offer. So I'd quite like to be Minister for Education, please. I reckon I could sort out schools. What do you fancy?
I don't want to do it. I've spent too much time with politicians.
You don't need to get voted in anymore.
I don't want to be one of them. Now, let's go to our political correspondent, Olivia Utley in Westminster. Olivia, I heard the new Tory chairman, Richard Holden, on GBNews today saying this is a united party. Well, not the Tory MPs I spoke to yesterday. They didn't seem very united because, A, a lot of them were furious about the sacking of Suella Braverman. B, a lot of them just don't get why David Cameron is back.
Well, absolutely. As you say, Andrew, I think that Richard Holden's assessment that this is a united Conservative party this morning couldn't really be further from the truth. I've been speaking to plenty of Conservative MPs who are not happy at all about the dismissal of Suella Braverman. There are 20 MPs in the new Conservatives group who've already got together and already seem to be, if not plotting, then at least not saying particularly nice things about Rishi Sunak in their WhatsApp groups. There are probably on top of those 20 another 20 or 30 more who really, really like Suella Braverman, who staunchly back her. And although they might not want to kick up a fuss right now, they are waiting in the wings, they're biding their time until closer to a general election, and then they could well start throwing their toys out of the pram. As you say, Suella Braverman isn't the only thing which has divided opinion. The return of David Cameron is very controversial indeed. I've spoken to quite a lot of Conservative MPs who are really pleased to see him back. They feel that the grown-ups are back in the room, as they put it. They think that he has the sort of heft and experience to represent Britain on the world stage, and they think that it will free up Rishi Sunak to concentrate on the problems here at home, to concentrate on the general election. Meanwhile, there are just as many who think that this is a blast from the past. The Conservative Party is trying to show that it's something different, that it can offer something new, and how they're doing that is bringing back a Prime Minister from 8 years ago, a man who represented austerity, which is very unpopular, and who represented the Remain campaign, which is, of course, very unpopular as well. So it's a really divided Conservative parliamentary party this morning, and I think those divisions are echoed in the wider country and in the wider Conservative Party. It seems that Rishi Sunak's calculation has been that essentially the red wall is already lost. The by-election defeats, those really, really crushing by-election defeats that we've seen, and all of the polling in recent weeks suggests that the red wall probably has gone for the Conservatives. And so now it seems that Rishi Sunak is focusing on those southern seats known as the blue wall, really what used to be very, very safe Tory seats, and are now up for grabs from the Lib Dems, where the Lib Dems are really putting in a big showing. They're sending out all of their campaigners for every single one of these by-elections. And Rishi Sunak's hope is that seeing the familiar face of David Cameron, that reassuring presence perhaps, his older Tony and sort of born to rule vibe, will go down well in those blue wall seats in the south and could help him to hold on to a few of those constituencies which are looking a bit shady at the moment.
Olivia, I'd be fascinated to know where Cameron sits in Cabinet this morning. His first time back in Cabinet since he flounced out after having lost the Brexit referendum, because as Foreign Secretary, he's one of the most senior cabinets. Is he going to take his place by Rishi Sunak's side? Is he going to be further around the table? Do we know yet?
Sunak's going to sit on his knee, isn't he?
Oh... we don't squash him if he's sat on his knee. We don't know yet. It'll be really interesting to see. I would absolutely love to be a fly on the wall for that first cabinet meeting. I hope he manages not just to walk in and sit back in his old place where the Prime Minister sits, which I'm sure would be very tempting.
Very interesting. That's Olivia Utley, our political correspondent. Thanks for joining us. Ben Habib from Reform UK. So you can't stop smiling because you know this is a major recruiting agent for your party.
Well, I mean, yesterday we got hundreds of new members joining Reform. Yeah, we did. Coming, you know, in droves. It was remarkable. I mean, yesterday was a politically charged mega day, wasn't it? From the minute Suella went to then David Cameron's appointment, and then that dog, a bone to a dog, if you like, appointing Esther, who has oodles of common sense, and thankfully, at least there will be her voice in Cabinet, if not as a member of Cabinet. But what a day yesterday's been.
Why do you think people joined Reform yesterday? What do you offer that they feel they lost in those changes yesterday?
Yeah, well, Suella Braverman, in my view, was arguably the last genuinely conservative member of Cabinet.
Correct.
She spoke for traditional conservative values. She wanted to eliminate illegal migration. She wanted to bring migration down. She was obviously at her wit's end because she's been making public pronouncements, almost breaking collective responsibility for now a 12-month period. And she also wanted to call out the two-tier policing system, which, the common man on the Clapham omnibus, it's quite clear that certain groups of people treated much more leniently than other groups of people. And DEI, diversity, equality and inclusion, which I hope Esther will tackle head-on, is the root of the problem. It's not just something institutions adopt voluntarily. It's a regulatory requirement for institutions, businesses, pension funds, insurance companies to practice DEI. And if they want to eliminate the two-tier policing system, if they want society to go back to a more homogenous, collective, cultural, and integrated culture, the thing to do is to get rid of DEI, which...
What does it stand for? Diversity?
Diversity, equality and inclusion.
Oh,
and
God.
At its heart, Andrew, what it basically says is that ethnic minorities, people from minority religious backgrounds or with sexual preferences of a minority nature, should have their interests and rights promoted above those of the majority.
And why should they?
And why should they? It is the embedding of racism. It's the embedding of prejudice. And I have to say, having been brought up in this country ever since 1979, when people say there was more racism around back in the 70s and 80s than there is now, I have to say I didn't experience any racism.
And where's your family from, Ben?
So my dad's Punjabi, and my mother was born in Hounslow.
Yeah.
Isleworth, actually. So, just... West London. So I'm sort of half-half. But I was brought up in this country at a time in a recessionary environment. Andrew, you'll remember it. I do. There were lots of divisions in society, but we didn't have racism. I was brought up to believe that we didn't have institutional racism. I was brought up to believe everyone was equal. And that was it. It was a settled state. Now we're told everyone isn't equal. Black lives matter.
Yeah.
And however which way you want to cut that, it implies white lives don't matter as much.
Yeah.
And that can't be right.
And the police taking the knee to this.
And the police, the way the police policed the march and policed the so-called right-wing thugs who were kettled and prevented from being able to go to the cenotaph in the way that they wished to. I'm not making any excuses for violence on the streets of London. That is completely wrong. But there was verbal violence non-stop during that march, of the kind that if it had been made by white people holding St George's flags, the police would have stepped in instantly.
Yeah.
They did. It is two-tier, isn't it?
It is two-tier.
And so
the reason people are joining Reform is because they see Rishi Sunak, an unelected Prime Minister, doesn't have his party's backing, certainly doesn't have the electorate's backing, getting rid of a cabinet minister who spoke for the people. You know, the majority of people in this country want Brexit. The majority of Brexiteers speak and believe the things that believe the things that I believe in.
And what's your personal opinion of David Cameron as a politician? What does he now bring to this?
Well, I'm astounded that he would appoint David Cameron. Leave aside all the obvious democratic deficit that that appointment reflects. It's a vote of no confidence by the Prime Minister in his own MPs. He must have looked round his parliamentary party and said, I can't see any one of you fulfilling the Foreign Secretary's role adequately. And then when you think about the role itself, David Cameron was the Prime Minister who engendered the Arab Spring. He was the one who tore Libya apart. Gaddafi was an awful man.
Yeah.
But we now have a failed state in Libya. We nearly brought Egypt to its knees. In fact, it was brought to its knees. The Muslim Brotherhood took Egypt over, which had, until that point, been a Western ally. Went to the Muslim Brotherhood, and then thankfully General Sisi took control again. It nearly brought Saudi to its knees. Now, I've got a lot of criticism of the Saudi regime, but you do not want to destabilise Saudi Arabia. It ruined Syria. And all of this destabilisation that David Cameron brought to the Middle East enabled Iran to take a very powerful position, and Iran funds Hamas.
And it's also part of the reason we've got so much mass migration in the Middle East.
So David Cameron, for the democratic reasons which are obvious, should never have been appointed Foreign Secretary. For the damage it does to the morale of the Conservative Party, he should never have been appointed Foreign Secretary. For his record in foreign policy, he should never have been appointed Foreign Secretary. And then the last thing is, this is a Prime Minister who voted Remain. This is a gentleman who voted Remain, campaigned for Remain, and had to resign as Prime Minister because of his position on Remain.
And it's so interesting, Ben, and what you just did then by saying this is a Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, it's such a high risk to bring him in as a former Prime Minister, because a lot of the concerns about Rishi Sunak is that he doesn't appeal to the electorate. He doesn't seem like a Prime Minister. Nobody voted for him. And he's always almost cast himself as the deputy head boy now to Cameron as the head boy. I mean, I joked about the fact that he'd be sitting on his knee at the cabinet meeting this morning.
Well, they say daddy's home, don't they?
But they say daddy's home. I mean, I just don't see how this will work out well for Sunak in any sense.
It's not going to work out well. The country is going to see it for what it is, which is a massive swing back to the left. I mean, the Conservative Party's always been too far left, in my opinion, but it's ejected traditional Conservative values unequivocally now. It's turned its back on the red wall. It is targeting Liberal Democrat seats, and it's going to do all the kind of things that are going to drive Esther mad in the job that they've just given her.
Yeah. One last point. All you need to know about the appointment of Cameron, Michael Heseltine welcomed it. That old, pompous Remain bore. Michael Heseltine says it's great that Cameron's back. And he then said, can we bring back George Osborne too? At which point, groan.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually a tragedy. You know, I laugh because it's political theatre, it's political farce, but it's a tragedy for the country, the direction we're heading in. There's no vision of how this country is going to reduce migration, get rid of illegal migration, grow the economy.
Two technocrats, basically, in Cameron and Sunak, and it worries me.
Ben, thanks for coming in. Great to talk to you. Now, the King is celebrating his 75th birthday with the launch of a project to help people facing food poverty, and he's holding a reception to celebrate nursing and midwifery in the United Kingdom.
Royal Pageant Master Bruno Peake joins us now. Good morning, Bruno.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to talk about something really happy for a change.
Well, it's nice to do so, isn't it? What will the King Charles's celebrations involve then today?
Well, as you know, he has lots of different plans in place that will celebrate his birthday today. But I think, and this is my personal opinion, I think what this event that he's devised, Coronation Food Project, just shows that we've got a real caring king and queen now in this country to be able to help people like he wants to, not focusing on himself, but helping people in need. To me, that shows real leadership and real caring.
How do you think, Bruno, he's doing? It's been a year now, and he had a very long apprenticeship, didn't he, following in the footsteps of the Queen? I think we may have lost Bruno.
May have lost our
What
our
a shame.
Let's have a look at what he's going to be doing today. So he's going to be doing the Coronation Food Project. He's going to be marking the birthday with basically bridging the gap between food waste and food need across all 4 nations of the United Kingdom, helping people and helping the planet, it says.
And at 5:30, Piccadilly Circus is going to display for 10 minutes an animation about the food project, and we're going to get a 62-gun salute. Now, I wanted to ask Bruno, why a 62-gun salute? Because he's 75.
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
My knowledge of gun salutes
it's not my
very
area.
limited.
Now, we might have Bruno back. Have we got Bruno? We don't have Bruno back, so we'll just carry on talking.
Yeah.
Do tell us what your views, too, on the King. Is he doing a good job? Do you think he's, I mean, pretty hard act to follow? And there are rumours that Prince Harry, miserable prodigal son, is going to call his dad to say happy birthday. And I was a bit unkind about that. I said, oh, why would he even want a phone call from his son? But you're right, Bev. He's a dad. He'd want a phone call from his son.
A phone call from his son.
And let's hope he does it.
As long as Harry doesn't record it and then play it in his next.
Well, quite.
Netflix
Is it going to be in Netflix? And is Meghan going to be on the? Is Meghan going to be on the party line?
Well, quite. Let's see what else he's doing today. At 4:30, the King Charles is going to be holding this reception for nurses and midwives. 2 of the most important clinical groups in the country, in my opinion. I would say that, I suppose. He's going to host a reception to celebrate these amazing people. Majority of midwives are female, of course, women and nurses. It's going to form part of his NHS 70 and the NHS 75 celebrations as well. And we're seeing the pictures here. These are, obviously, this is the beautiful Princess of Wales.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to see much of his family, actually. I think there's a private dinner tonight with friends, and I think he might see William and Kate for a little bit, but it'll be a private affair. And also he was very keen not to be seen to be having a lavish celebration, because look, we had the coronation, lavish and expensive. We had the Queen's funeral, so he wanted to make sure it was low key. He's quite alive to the fact that he must not be seen to be a spendthrift monarch, because let's be honest, as Prince of Wales, he did spend like it was going out of fashion. He spent a lot of money in his time.
He was given a 3-tier birthday cake at Highgrove House in Gloucestershire. It had lots of community members with him. That's what the royals do well.
They do.
When they get members of the community who are doing lots of good, and you can share a piece of cake with them.
And so far, 1 year on, he hasn't put a foot wrong politically, because we know he's tempted all the time to say what he really thinks.
I imagine he sat there with his fist in his mouth most of the time.
Absolutely.
Right, still to come, someone's going to be doing a lot more household chores as his second half gets a major role in the cabinet. Philip Davies will join us in the studio to talk about Estimate Bay. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News, the People's Channel.
Morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Storm Debbie may have cleared away, but there's still going to be plenty of downpours around today, and gusty winds, particularly already across the southwest of England. Narrow band of very heavy rain is working across southern counties of England. A lot of spray, a lot of surface water on the roads, flashes of lightning, rumbles of thunder and blustery wind. The Met Office do have a yellow warning in place for those thundery showers. Elsewhere, there'll be quite a few showers through the day, but some sunny spells over the Midlands, Wales, parts of East Anglia as well. In the sunshine, we might squeak into the teens, but further north, lots of showers and lots of cloud. Feeling fairly chilly, temperatures 9 to 11 Celsius at best. More showers to come this evening as well for central Scotland, feeding into Northern Ireland. Frequent heavy showers here and across northern England. Further south, well, a few, particularly in the southwest, but many places will be dry and largely clear as well. Some clearer skies and lighter winds in northern Scotland could allow temperatures to get down to freezing, but for most will be in single figures, 6 to 8 Celsius in most towns and cities. Bit of a north-south split then to start tomorrow. There'll be showers across the north of Northern Ireland, feeding into northern England, central and southern Scotland. Northern Scotland seeing a mostly dry and fine day, and much of the south actually having sunny spells and not too many showers through Wednesday. Decent chance of a dry day here. Still on the cool side for most though, 7 to 9 across the north, 10 to 13 further south.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Monday the 14th of November. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce.
Rishi rolls the dice. The Prime Minister's reshuffle, well, it sparked anger from the Tory right, and a certain David Cameron, Lord Cameron, is attending his first cabinet meeting as we speak.
And common sense czar, Conservative MP Esther McVey will lead the anti-woke agenda in Rishi's new cabinet. We'll have her husband, Philip Davies MP, on next.
Happy birthday, Your Majesty. Yes, King Charles is 75 today. He's going to use his birthday to launch a new scheme to tackle food poverty, and he's expecting a phone call from Prince Harry.
And Rwanda ruling. The big decision will be made tomorrow on whether or not the plan to send migrants to Rwanda is legal. The Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, says that it must go ahead. That story tomorrow is massive.
Huge.
And it's risked almost being overshadowed by the Cameron appointment yesterday.
Yeah, and of course, if the judges chuck it out, then there'll be all sorts of pressure that we just abandon the European Court of Human Rights. But that's going to be very difficult now we've got David Cameron as Foreign Secretary, because there's no way he's going to approve that.
No, not at all. And also, you know that this King Charles is expecting a phone call from Prince Harry. How would we know such a thing?
Because Harry's people would have leaked it. That would be my take. Yeah, it would. I can't see that would have come from the palace. That would have come from Harry. To show that he is a loving son after all, even though he's poured gallons of bile on the royal family to earn money while he lives his new life in California.
Gallons of bile. I do hope that didn't put you off your morning coffee. Let us know your thoughts this morning, gbviews@gbnews.com. First, though, the very latest news with Sophia.
Good morning. It's 1 minute past 10. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister is holding his first cabinet meeting after his dramatic reshuffle, which saw David Cameron make an unexpected return to frontline politics. In a major gamble, Rishi Sunak gave the former Prime Minister a peerage in order to make him Foreign Secretary. Lord Cameron admits such a return is not usual, but says he wants to support Mr Sunak through a difficult job at a hard time. Conservative Party Chairman Richard Holden told GB News that this is positive for the Tories.
I think you can see we've got a very broad church of a Conservative Party. People like me from the north of England, people like David Cameron, who've had a huge amount of experience in government from right across the country. And I think it's really good. You can see a strong and united party coming together now for the future. We've got those big aims that the Prime Minister's already outlined, and there'll be some big decisions on those coming up this week.
Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, told GB News he thinks Rishi Sunak's move is desperate.
My observation would be that having David Cameron as Foreign Secretary doesn't solve Rishi Sunak's problems. In fact, it's quite odd to me that Rishi Sunak has had to look to the past to try to bring back a quote-unquote grown-up to help get a control of the Conservative Party. If Rishi Sunak was a good enough Prime Minister, he would be able to get a grip of this, and he's failed to do so.
US President Joe Biden has told Israel the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza must be protected as fighting continues. It comes after the World Health Organization said Gaza's main hospital is no longer functioning. Israel has accused Hamas of having a command and control center under the hospital, which the terror group denies. Meanwhile, the Israeli military has said it's in the process of transferring incubators from a hospital in Israel to Gaza. The move could facilitate the evacuation of newborn babies after distress calls from the neonatal unit as fuel runs out. The pace of wage growth has eased back from a record level, with no change in the UK's unemployment rate. Figures from the Office for National Statistics found average wages, excluding bonuses, were 7.7% higher than a year earlier in the 3 months to September. That's down from the revised 7.9% level registered last month. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has welcomed the growth and said his autumn statement will set out his plans to get people back into work. A parole hearing for one of the killers of 2-year-old James Bulger is taking place behind closed doors over the next 2 days. The hearing will decide whether John Venables can be released after his latest sentence for possessing child abuse images. Venables and Robert Thompson were 10-year-olds when they killed 2-year-old James Bulger in 1993 in Merseyside. The killers were given life sentences for the murder but were released on licence with new identities in 2001. Police have arrested 115 Just Stop Oil protesters after they slow marched on the A41 and blocked a major road. A group marched on Hendon yesterday morning, including Brent Cross flyover. The group claims the Metropolitan Police had blocked the flyover, preventing protesters from clearing the road. The force responded by saying all the activists had been arrested as they showed no intention of leaving the road. They made arrests along the road and transported them to custody. Applications have opened for Britons to register their XL Bully dogs for exemption before the breed is made illegal. Owners who want to keep their dogs have to apply to an exemption scheme or choose to have their dog euthanised and apply for compensation. It will be illegal to own an XL Bully from the 1st of February next year. They must be registered by the end of January. A thunderstorm warning is in effect as heavy rain continues to batter the country. The Met Office says there's a yellow weather warning in place for the south of England, and the Environment Agency has issued 11 flood warnings. Storm Debbie is set to clear, but wet and windy weather will linger. Drivers and those thinking of taking a bus should expect their journeys to be longer due to spray, standing water and hail. Travel journalist Simon Calder told GB News trains and planes may also be delayed due to adverse weather conditions.
There's another 28 cancellations in and out of London Heathrow, which is really quite a significant number. That's going to affect 5,000 or so people. We also had ferry cancellations across the Irish Sea. The weather is still pretty exciting in the Channel, but it's the railways where you are seeing really serious problems.
This is GB News across the UK, on TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Good morning, it's 10:07. Thank you for joining us. Let's have a look what you've been saying at home about the reshuffle and David Cameron. Derek says Cameron will spend most of his time abroad, preparing the way for our return to the EU and unaccountable to the House.
No, that's not going to happen.
Dangerous. Robert said Braverman said exactly what the British people were thinking and was sacked for speaking her mind.
That's true.
Loads of you agreeing with that. The grassroots of the party will be furious, especially with the return of David Cameron, who ran away when he lost the EU referendum. Let's not forget he tried to sell us his failed negotiation with the EU. Another viewer, I feel that Conservative voters will switch to Reform or stay at home. God help us now if Starmer becomes PM. Quite simply, I despair. On and on and on and on. Ron says, I can't believe what's happening in the Tory party. They get rid of a strong minister who was loved and respected by the public and brought in a failed, defeated and runaway Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak obviously has no more ideas or he's insensitive. He should resign and make way for someone who has drive and direction.
But the Prime Minister has got great ideas, hasn't he, Philip Davies, who's joined us in the studio, Philip of this parish, because he's put your missus back in government. Now, she's in the Cabinet Office. Oh, we're going to Chris for Hope first, and we're going to go to Philip.
We'll leave you hanging for a minute.
Save me up.
Because we want to know all about the job she's got. So, Chris for Hope joins us, who's our white political editor in Westminster. Chris, has the shockwaves died down yet in the Tory party? Because they were pretty strong, the waves yesterday when I was talking to MPs.
No, I think they haven't not yet died down, have they, Andrew and Bev? We haven't yet heard from Suella Braverman. Her next intervention could be quite extraordinary. Just over my shoulder, you're seeing the Cabinet starting to leave from the first meeting which the PM, Rishi Sunak, has organised since he did his big shake-up yesterday, the first big moment, political reshuffle moment of his time as Prime Minister. His first remarks were, looking around this table, I know we've got an energetic and enthusiastic team that will deliver for this country. Let's get to work. Now, sitting probably opposite him, I haven't seen the images yet from the meeting, was David Cameron, Lord Cameron now, as we know him, attending his first cabinet since he quit as Prime Minister back in 2016. The PM also said a warm welcome to everyone, particularly those for whom it may not be their first time. That's obviously a joke in terms of politics, because of course the PM ran the show all that time. The dynamic between Sunak and Cameron is something which has been exciting. Lots of people I've been speaking to. How will that, on the world stage, who's the boss, who will have the authority, and will Cameron learn to walk one step behind his junior, Rishi Sunak, 20 years his junior, of course. And there's no question that, as you read those headlines out, those messages from our viewers, what is this doing for the right? What is the question to which David Cameron is the answer? How would David Cameron help to win those by-elections that were lost so embarrassingly for the party early this year? Those are the questions I think have got to be asked. And also the further question I think you've got to ask, what's wrong with the other 360 MPs, Tory MPs in the House of Commons? Why is not one of them, even Philip Davies next year, why is he not good enough to be Foreign Secretary? Why does the PM have to look outside of the entire building of Parliament? Not even the House of Lords was good enough. He went beyond all that and got David Cameron. Why is that? What's wrong with the current bunch elected? And the point is we elect MPs, and that's how it is. You can't just select random people. We're not like, we are a democracy where you elect people who become ministers. That's how it should be. That's been broken by the PM here, not since Lord Carrington back in the day, when I was a young boy in short trousers, was a peer, a Foreign Secretary, and that's, I think, is a legitimate issue here for Keir Starmer to talk about tomorrow in parliamentary questions, and I can concern, I think, for Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the Commons, about how do you question about foreign policy. Andrew Mitchell, of course, no friend back in the day of David Cameron over Plebgate, don't forget. You've got to ask Andrew Mitchell questions, but only his boss might know the answer. His boss isn't there. It's not a great look.
Chris, what about the other point? So we've now pretty much worked out that this deal was done in the Downing Street flat last Tuesday. Privately, it didn't leak. That's extraordinary in itself. But Cameron's peerage would have to be cleared by the House of Lords Appointments Commission. They've done that in record time. Now, I know he's a former Prime Minister, but he's had a pretty controversial period out in the political wilderness with his lobbying of that company called Greensill, which went under. He was lobbying individual ministers, including Rishi Sunak. And we know he has connections, financial connections, to China. So they rushed that through. Did they do it with indecent haste? And could they have possibly done the scrutiny properly in such a short period of time?
We don't know. It's quite an opaque group, the House of Lords Appointments Commission. We're not even told when they're reviewing an appointment, merely after it's happened. And this is a classic, slightly a stitched-up idea, given that the talk started last Tuesday, and these talks can go, as you know, a long time over, particularly when there's been an issue of concern about the issue with Greensill and the lobbying by David Cameron. Of course, he was cleared over that, but it was deeply embarrassing to read his WhatsApp messages to junior people behind me in number 10 Downing Street asking for support with this company, this financial company. A big concern, I think, but he says in his interview yesterday with the pool reporters that's in the past. He's moved on. Well, I bet Labour hasn't moved on. Behind me, someone's leaving Cabinet, just who it is. There's no one leaving Cabinet at all, so forgive me. But you're seeing a procession now of new faces leaving Cabinet. Young people, the idea is to bring down lots of young people elected back in 2019, junior MPs, people who me and Andrew remember as special advisors during a few years ago.
Here they come.
Why is David Cameron the answer, Mr. Eden-Harris? Why is... That's Chris Eden-Harris, the Northern Ireland Secretary. I was asking him, though, why is David Cameron the answer to the Tories' election problems? He said, hello. So there we are.
Very profound answer, Chris. Chris, thanks for that. That's Chris Hope, who is our political editor in Downing Street. And as trailed here, our very own delightful Philip Davies. So the missus is back in government.
She is, yes. It was a shock all round, I think. It was certainly a shock to us.
Right. You see, I think Estimate Vey has too much common sense to want to be the common sense minister. From what I know about her, I don't think it's entirely complimentary, Philip. I think she's better than that.
In what way? What do you mean?
What I mean by that is I think she should have... She's been a good MP for a while now. How many years has she been an MP for?
Well, in total, 11, I think.
11 years. She's got the experience. She's got the skills. I think they should, if they wanted her in there, give her a proper top-tier cabinet position. Why not?
Well, you'd have to ask the Prime Minister about why he gave her the position he did and not another one. But look, I think the point is that, you know, I think you don't have to be a political genius to work out the Conservative Party's not in the best of shape at the moment, if you just look at the poll ratings. And so I think it's incumbent upon anybody who's asked to get involved and join up and try and help the situation to do so. And that's really the basis upon which Esther wanted to help the Prime Minister. You know, the Conservative Party's needs, you know, we've got a big year ahead of us to try and bring things round, and everyone needs to put their shoulder to the wheel to try and do so.
I get that, but what does the job entail? So she's in the Cabinet Office, so she's going to have a roving brief, and she's been called the Minister for Common Sense. So what is she going to do? What will her day entail?
Well, it's not. I'm not the Prime Minister, Andrew, who sort of sets the ministerial.
She must have had that conversation with the Prime Minister when she accepted the job.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think she's got to make the job her own. Basically, I mean, it's a new job, and so it's up to her to put her stamp on it. And one thing that anyone knows about Esther, she'll certainly put a stamp on it. And so, but I think, you know, the idea will be that she'll be able to work with government departments to try and bring forward some common sense measures, and no doubt there'll always be a role for somebody in the Cabinet Office to squash any ideas that are coming through that are not sensible and common sense. I think it's the Cabinet Office has that role to try and promote good things and squash bad things.
We were talking earlier to Ben Abid from Reform UK. He said diversity, equality, inclusion. That's the root of a lot of these problems, because they're always put first. Diversity, whether it's because of your sexuality, so black people, ethnic. she's going to have to try... Can she reverse that trend now in government? Is that going to be part of her job?
Well,
to just all be treated equally?
Well, you know, she's, like you say, there's a big role. There's an awful lot of woke stuff, non-common sense that goes on in government. Her job is to do what she can to try and put a stop to some of the nonsense that we see, bring a bit of common sense back to things. That, you know, there's a huge amount of taxpayers' money wasted on all this equality, diversity and inclusion thing, national government, local government. You know, there's no doubt she's got her work cut out because there's a huge blob in there in government who are very keen on all of these things.
They will try and crush her.
Of course, of course. You know, but those of us who've tried to do that know that it's not easy to.
And obviously you've woken up this morning. We've got the front page of the Mail here, picture of Cameron, picture of Esther on the front page. You see, this changes your family life. It changes your personal life as well to some degree, doesn't it? Because she will be much more in the public eye now than she has been. She's been able to be on GBNews and do a great job and get on with representing her constituents. But this changes the focus on you guys. How do you feel about that?
Well, you know, I'll always support Esther in whatever she chooses to do, and you know, and I certainly, you know, from the Prime Minister's point of view, if you're looking for a minister for common sense, where better to come than GB News to find a minister for common sense?
But actually, wouldn't you think that common sense would just run around every theme? It should just all of those people with those sorts of responsibilities should have their own common sense. How is Esther going to change anything?
Well, I mean, I agree. In an ideal world, you would be able to rely on everybody. But look, I think people outside of politics underestimate how demanding being a government minister, how things are just thrown at you all the time, and things can get... You know, they get through the net. Even really good ministers sometimes miss something that's been sneaked through by the establishment, and so it's always good to have somebody there in the nets as the goalkeeper to look at everything that's coming through, to say, hold on a minute, how has this been allowed to come through? And I think one of the key roles that Esther will be able to play, hopefully, is to see all these things that are coming through, and if something does slip through the net, to be able to say, actually, we need to stop this.
Well, let me ask you, sacking of Suella Braverman, you didn't agree with that, did you?
Look, I'm a massive fan of Suella's. I agree with her on everything. I think she put the Prime Minister in a really difficult position. She wasn't sacked for what she believes in. No. You know, I think that, you know, in terms of the protests, the Prime Minister had said pretty much the same as Suella about the protests over the weekend. He wanted them stopped as well. Suella was sacked because she was writing articles and things like this without clearance from Number 10. And you can't have anarchy in government. And you might say, well, it's all right because we agreed with what she said. But when the next minister goes off-piece and writes something that we don't agree with, how does the Prime Minister discipline them when he's done nothing? You know, she put him in a difficult position. And if he sacked her, he gets accused of being, you know, a big lefty who's kicked out somebody who was talking common sense. I can assure you, if he hadn't sacked her, he'd have been accused of being weak and allowing his authority to be undermined. He was in a no-win situation.
What about the return of Call Me Dave? The Chillax Dave.
Yeah, I didn't see that one coming. I didn't see that one coming either. I mean, look, nobody voted against, no Conservative MP voted against David Cameron's government more often than me.
That's very true.
I disagreed with him on many things when he was in government. But look, I think in terms of Britain on the world stage, I actually think it's quite good to have a former Prime Minister as Foreign Secretary. I think it does add some lustre to the country on the world stage. And look, this idea that David Cameron's becoming Foreign Secretary to get us back into the EU,
that's nonsense.
It's just a load of old rubbish. I mean, if David Cameron wanted to get us back into the EU, he'd have stayed on as Prime Minister after the referendum and worked and done it then. He walked away because he didn't want to get us back into the EU because he accepted the result of the referendum. So, you know, I think that anyone who thinks that's in cloud cuckoo land.
Except that those of us who worry that those at the top tier of government don't have the best interests of Britain at heart and are some kind of globalist puppets for whether that's corporate pressure that's being exerted on them. We know he got in trouble with Greensill. He worries me. He worries me. I'm not sure that his heart is in it for us.
Well, of all my criticisms of David Cameron, that isn't one of them. I mean, he's deeply patriotic. We might have different opinions about what is the right thing for the country, but I certainly don't worry about that with David Cameron. I think the point that Chris Hope made earlier is a legitimate one about scrutiny of the House of Commons of the Foreign Secretary. I think that's a very legitimate point. And I know the Speaker of the House of Commons is concerned about that too, and rightly so. It's his job to be concerned about things like that. I think that's a legitimate criticism of his appointment, but I don't think anything else is. I think actually, you know, he's a high calibre person who's got lots of experience. He will add lustre to the country on the world stage. I think that's all a good thing. And, you know, he's not going to try and undermine Brexit from within. That is not what David Cameron believes in.
No, he might overshadow the boss, though.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Well, I hope that Esther does overshadow your boss. Because
She'll
the
be
government's
great.
lost. The government's gain is GB News' loss.
Yeah, we'll miss your show on a Saturday morning.
Yes. Well, I'm in the market for a new wife, if anybody's...
A new wife? I think you'll find bigamy is illegal. Oh, you mean a television wife?
I hear Suella Braverman has a bit of time on her hands.
What you want.
Is Beverly going to audition?
Well, as I say, I hear Suella Braverman's got a bit of time on her hands. That might make compulsive viewing on the Saturday.
And you obviously like it very much, Philip.
I do like it very much.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Right, now, still to come. After appointing the unelected Remainer David Cameron and firing the woman who described the Rwanda plan as her dream, is the Prime Minister, as we've just been discussing, betraying the right of the party? We're going to be debating that on Britain's Newsroom. This is GB News.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And good morning, it's 10:25 with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, the sacking of Home Secretary Suella Braverman has fuelled a Tory civil war as one MP published a formal letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister.
And with David Cameron back in the Cabinet this morning as Foreign Secretary, we're asking, has Rishi Sunak betrayed the right of his party? We're joined by co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism and the political commentator, Russell Quirk. We've lost the name of our founder of...
And we've got Albie with us, haven't we?
There
we
Albie,
go.
there you are. Albie,
our very own Albie.
There we are. Albie, over to you. Is this a betrayal of the Tory right? Because the MPs I spoke to yesterday said, you're not kidding.
Hear the output.
Can you hear us, Albie?
I don't think it is a betrayal of the Tory right. I can hear you loud and clear, Bev and Andrew. No, I don't think it's a betrayal of the Tory right at all. Look, what Rishi Sunak has done is replace the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, who was simply causing an absolute nuisance in her role as the Home Secretary. She was disloyal, she was ineffective, and she was incompetent. And being on the right wing of the Tory party, in my opinion, should mean, as Janet Daly from The Telegraph said, believing in free markets, low taxation, small government, and patriotism, because you believe that is the best thing for the country, not being hard-hearted, intolerant, and indifferent to hardship, and also bad at your job. So if the Tory right is upset that Suella Braverman is gone, they need to up their standards because she wasn't good at what being on the Tory right is meant to be.
Well, let's bring Russell Quirk in here. Russell Quirk, I fundamentally disagree with what Albie said. What do you think? Because I think she genuinely showed real political muscle. She was brave, she spoke out, and she was speaking what I think a lot of ordinary people feel, particularly about the way the police operate.
So, look, she was absolutely speaking the truth. You know, we've seen in the weekend newspapers lots of frontline police officers talking about the fact that they were given operational diktat from above that they should treat the Palestinian protesters, for instance, with kid gloves, that they should be lenient with them. And in sharp contrast, of course, we saw, I guess, what some would call patriots and others would call the far right, being kettled, being searched, going in and out of pubs, and being prevented from going to the cenotaph to pay their respects. So there is absolutely no doubt that there is a two-tier policing regime in Britain, certainly across the Metropolitan Police. And for Suella Braverman as our Home Secretary, who is effectively in charge of the police, albeit I accept not operationally, for her to speak the truth, Andrew, she did, and then to be fired for it, I think really just shows how left-leaning Sunak, Hunt and the rest of the government are. And honestly, if they think that this lurch to the left is going to somehow, by way of fighting the centre ground, win them more votes at the next election, then they really have genuinely got another think coming. The base, the ordinary Conservatives that actually want to see us being tough on crime, tough on illegal immigration and lowering taxes, that is not the right. That is conservatism. And that is what the base of Conservative voters would insist on. And frankly, they'll all stay at home now in the upcoming general election, or they'll end up voting for reform.
Albie Amakona, you're shaking your head. Go on.
Yeah, I'm completely shaking my head. Suella Braverman wasn't sacked for speaking the truth. I've said on media outlets that I think some of the things she wrote in her article was correct. I think the two-tier policing system, a fair point. She was sacked for being disloyal, incompetent and ineffective. I agree with lots of things that Russell has actually just said. But the simple fact of the matter is, Suella Braverman was not the woman to deliver that kind of policy platform. What has she actually done during her time in government? What is one thing that Russell can point to that is a delivery from Suella Braverman at her time as Attorney General or as Home Secretary? She's done absolutely nothing.
Well, let's ask Russell. Russell, what's she done?
Well, let me answer that. Well, let me answer that. Look, so Suella, I'm afraid, was between a rock and a hard place. Look, she's damned if she does, damned if she doesn't. She speaks her mind and shows that she was actually probably the only true Conservative in the Cabinet, the only politician that we've seen in a long, long time with conviction, with an ideology that she expresses on a daily basis. The problem is, of course, because of collective responsibility, she's got a left-leaning Remainer Cabinet that would have restricted her movements and what she could do significantly. And, of course, as we all know, the so-called blob, the civil service, that is just ridden with left-leaning civil servants that are trying to stop the government doing anything that they've said they're going to do with regard to stopping this scourge, this invasion of illegal immigration from the Channel. She had absolutely no chance of completing what she wanted to do because she had no support, either from the civil service or from her cabinet. But Albie, don't you agree that we want to see conviction? politicians, conservative politicians, with an ideology rather than this flip-flopping from poll to poll, from headline to headline, whereby, of course, nothing then gets done.
The only conviction that I have seen from Suella Braverman is a conviction for incompetence. You weren't able to answer my question when I asked you, what is a policy that Suella Braverman has delivered from all of her time in government? You blamed everyone else. A Conservative value is personal responsibility. Suella Braverman has taken no personal responsibility for her failings. She was one of the most powerful politicians in the country for over a year, and she's got absolutely nothing to show for it other than divisive, inflammatory headlines. I think the Tory right needs to up their game, and the Conservative Party deserves better than people like Suella Braverman.
Albie, who would you say represents the Tory right now, of who is left and who has a position of power after yesterday's reshuffle?
I think Kemi Badenoch is absolutely a rising star on the Tory right of the party. She's also shown herself to be someone that delivers. She delivered the CPTPP trade deal. She delivered the Inclusive Britain strategy. She's actually delivered on things during her time in government in multiple roles over multiple years. That's very different from Suella Braverman's record, of absolute failure in almost every department she's been in.
Russell, can I ask you, does the restoration of David Cameron to government, does that confirm, in your view, the betrayal of the Tory right?
Yeah, it does. Look, this is the man that effectively broke politics in Britain by going to the country as he did with the Brexit vote, because he was running scared of UKIP, because he himself was not conservative enough. And the fact, as has been rehearsed on social media in the last 24 hours extensively, the fact that of 350 or so Conservative MPs, Rishi Sunak either doesn't think any of them are capable of taking that role as Foreign Secretary, or, to the point, is too scared of those on the so-called right of the party that could do it, that he has to then bring in an ardent, blatant Remainer, which, frankly, apart from Esther McVey now, I don't think there's a Brexiteer in that cabinet. But astonishingly, against the country that voted 52% to leave the EU.
We're late for the news, gentlemen. We could carry this on all morning, but I'm afraid we've run out of time. Let's have this conversation again soon. Co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albie Amankona, and political commentator Russell Quirk. And, of course, you can see Albie every Saturday evening on GB News at 6 o'clock. And
just for the record, Rishi Sunak is a Brexiteer. He did campaign for it in 2016, what he says he did.
And Albie's actually 5 o'clock, not 6, I've just remembered.
Yeah.
Right, we've got a lot more to come this morning. Worrying and insulting. A trans woman has been appointed as the boss of an endometriosis charity, even though it's impossible for someone born male to suffer from a womb condition.
That's the sort of nonsense that Esther McVey should be sorting out in government, frankly. No ifs, no buts. The immigration minister says that the Rwanda deportation plan must go ahead. We'll get the verdict tomorrow from the Supreme Court.
All of that and a lot more after your morning's news with Sophia.
It's 10:33. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister has held his first cabinet meeting after his dramatic reshuffle, which saw David Cameron make an unexpected return to frontline politics. In a major gamble, Rishi Sunak gave the former Prime Minister a peerage in order to make him Foreign Secretary. Lord Cameron admits such return is not usual, but says he wants to support Mr Sunak through a difficult job at a hard time. US President Joe Biden has told Israel the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza must be protected as fighting continues. It's after the World Health Organization said Gaza's main hospital is no longer functioning. Israel has accused Hamas of having a command and control centre under the hospital, which the terror group denies. The pace of wage growth has eased back from a record level, with no change in the UK's unemployment rate. Figures from the Office for National Statistics found average wages, excluding bonuses, were 7.7% higher than a year earlier in the 3 months to September. That's down from the revised 7.9% level registered last month. And you can get more on all those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
For stunning gold and silver coins you'll always value, Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2303 and €1.1475. The price of gold is £1,583 and 7 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,401 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
10:39 with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, weather warnings are in place across parts of the UK after Storm Debbie wreaked havoc across England yesterday.
We've had heavy rain and winds will continue to batter the UK with the Met Office warning of delays to train services, any excuse, of course. We're joined now by one of our favourite meteorologists, John Hammond. John, they don't need much excuse, do they, to delay trains and things, but is Storm Debbie really going to be a bad one?
Well, Debbie has done its worst, Andrew, here in Wensleydale. This is normally just a trickle of a stream. It's now an absolute torrent, and that is all flowing down into the valley. The valley is down there somewhere, where there are many, many road closures. And, you know, with all this rain cascading down into lower ground, I think flooding's going to be a real problem, even though Debbie itself, he says, as it starts pouring with rain again, Debbie itself has now cleared away. So the worst of the rain is probably going to ease, but of course it takes time for all that rain to work its way down through the river systems. The weather warnings today are across southern England, actually, for a change. Thunderstorms here for the next few hours. Further north, a bit of a respite. I say a bit of a respite, not much of one. The other element which has been affecting many parts is the wind. Debbie brought 91 mile-an-hour winds just at the top of the hill here, with the weather station up there, which recorded 95 mile-an-hour winds yesterday. Thankfully, it's a lot quieter now, but it's only a respite. And actually, over the next few days, Andrew, there's more rain to come. Keep your eyes on Thursday. And again at the weekend, we could see some further very heavy rain and more strong winds. So this incredibly wet and at times very windy spell, showing no signs of easing yet. There are just hints that come next week it will start to turn dry, but also chillier. But that seems a long way off for me at the moment, who's getting soaked to the skin.
Is it, John, is it particularly unusual for us to have such strong winds and such heavy rain?
I mean, autumn is notoriously a pretty wet season, Debs, and honestly, this one has been particularly wet. And a couple of reasons for that, Bev, is that there's been a very, very strong jet stream, and that's what propels and catapults these low-pressure systems towards us, and also very warm waters out in the Atlantic. And that combination of a strong jet stream above us, Bev, and very warm waters below, it's what's churned up these deep storm systems, and that's going to carry on, as I say, for the next few days. And then what we're going to see next week, hopefully, is that the jet stream clears off and colder Arctic air comes down. I know cold air doesn't suit all of us, but I think for many it'll be a welcome change after this deluge, I can tell you.
So is it going to feel like winter next week, John?
Yeah, something crisper, Andrew, something a bit more seasonal. I like that sort of weather, I don't know about you, but yeah, less rain, more frost, and hopefully some more sunshine. But as I say, that can change. That's a long way off, and I think we've got two more spells of particularly wet weather to come. One on Thursday and another one at the weekend. So there could well be further warnings, there could be further impacts, and that stream's not going to go down in a hurry, I don't think.
OK, thank you, John. John Hammond there. I am so jealous at John being out in that fresh air. How lovely. I mean, I know it's raining.
I think I'd have preferred to have a brolly.
Yeah, but no such thing as bad weather, just the wrong clothes, isn't that right?
Yeah.
It looks absolutely wonderful.
It did look lovely, actually.
Right, we're joined now in the studio by Tonya Buxton, political commentator.
The dream team.
And GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, as well. Let's just back reference that, guys, because my frustration, I think, when I'm hearing about all these flooding, Tonya, is I just keep walking around and seeing grids full of leaves and mud, and that the council haven't sorted out, and that's why people are
It's just weather. It's the same weather we've already had, and the problem is they're not clearing out the leaves to get rid of the water that's coming down. And actually, I think some buildings might have been built in a way that prevent the water from going down. It's just autumn. Autumn's rainy. You know, it's just like when we have a hot summer. Yeah. It's summer. Stop making drama about the weather.
Are you frightened of the weather, Nigel?
Well, look, the weather's changed. I mean, I know that
well, he just said it wasn't that unusual, John.
Well, I appreciate that, but just by simple experience, that when rainstorms come down, they're coming down harder than I can remember. When the heat waves come, they're hotter than I remember.
Nigel.
You're forgetting your memory now, Nigel. You just kind of... It's an age thing.
Do you know the name of the Prime Minister, Nigel?
Yeah, David Cameron. Let's talk about that, shall we? Tonya, David Cameron plucked from obscurity and just dropped into the cabinet. What do you make of it?
I think it's terrible. I mean, I think it's terrible. I mean, we all know that he was kind of heir to Blair. We know what Blair did in Iraq, and then he made a mess of Libya, and I don't know why he's foreign secretary, on what standing and on what grounds he's been brought in. I don't know what's going on, and I just, in my gut, feel this is so wrong. You know, coming out and saying, well, I was Prime Minister. Well, he was joint Prime Minister. He was only Prime Minister on his own, and as soon as he, you know, he threw his kind of ran out the pram and ran off after a year. So I don't think he's got the experience. I don't think he should be there. I think this is a really bad move on Rishi.
I was talking to Chris Hope, Nigel. I mean, The House of Lords Appointments Commission has to do a very important job. It has to vet and monitor the people who go into the upper house. They've done that in record time. Now, I know he's a former Prime Minister, so he would automatically, you'd think, get in. But he has done some pretty dodgy, dubious lobbying on behalf of a company called Greensill, which went bust.
Yes.
We know he lobbied the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who happens to be Rishi Sunak personally. He was targeting people in Number 10, texting. There was a whiff about it. There was an inquiry. How can they possibly have got cleared him so quickly?
Well, he was cleared of any wrongdoing over Greensill for a start. There's obviously the question about, I mean, Ian Duncan-Smith has been rabbiting on about China and whether or not he's taking money from China. He says not. So the Appointments Board can go through these things really quickly. Right. And what we seem to know now is that Rishi Sunak had him in last Tuesday to offer him the job, so long before Suella Braverman had blotted her copybook for the final time. Yeah, that would have given the Appointments Commission time enough to do the due diligence they needed to do.
So you don't think they've cut corners?
No, I don't, because I mean I know they can do these things really quickly in situations like that. Peter Mandelson, if you remember, he to get him into cabinet, he went through the House of Lords, same process.
But he'd been an EU commissioner and everything had been declared very publicly just before he went into
that's true. But again, it's the same process. Sure. It's the same process to get him in.
What does the Labour Party really think about the Cameron appointment?
Well, I mean, I think
because we get all the predictable Yahoo stuff, but you know what they're saying behind the scenes. What are they really saying?
The problem for the Labour Party is the fact that the Conservatives have actually moved towards the centre. Yeah. Now, we all know that the British people are, on the whole, moderate, sensible people, and the result of that is the majority of votes are in the centre. So that's what Tony Blair did. He moved the Labour Party to the centre. When Jeremy Corbyn came along, the voters rejected his sort of left-wing socialist revolution idea. Keir Starmer has brought the Labour Party back into the centre. Now Rishi Sunak is bringing the Tory party back onto that ground. So there's less of a divide between Labour and Tories. And clearly he wants to fight the election on competence.
And bringing Cameron back and getting rid of Braverman is a clear breach with the past of Liz Truss and Boris. Yes. That's what Sunak's people told me last night.
Yes, absolutely. Although, I mean, it goes at odds with his speech at the Tory conference where he talked about 30 years of failure about the Tories. That included David Cameron. But certainly someone like David Cameron, he's a well-known figure on the world stage. He will know a lot of other statesmen. I think something you said yesterday, that this is essentially not a political role if you're the Foreign Secretary. Yeah. So if for all those reasons, I think he's probably the right person. I'm curious about William Hague's part in all this. And I do wonder if William Hague was actually offered the job for David Cameron.
I think he was and didn't want it.
And do you know what? And all of that makes perfect sense, and all of that will be bouncing off the walls within Westminster. I don't think it makes any difference of who people are going to vote for, and that is what he's got to be looking at. There was very little in the King's speech for the voters, and I don't believe these changes of personnel yesterday are going to win him any votes.
Well, I quoted a Tory MP in my piece of mail today say it's just shifting the deck chairs on the decks of the Titanic.
It really is, and it's a real poke in the eye for those that voted Brexit, for the majority of the British people that voted Brexit, to bring him back in.
Because he was the architect of Project Fear, which told lies.
Yeah.
I mean, Nigel will start. We don't want to reheat the Brexit argument.
No, but I would agree with that.
Project Fear did tell lies.
Both sides told lies.
Yeah.
And I think that it was an
right.
important
I really want us to get on to the big story tomorrow: the Rwanda decision in the Supreme Court. Tonya, I don't believe they're going to, if I had to place a bet now, maybe we should put £1 on it, you and I, Andrew Pearce.
We have to come out of the ECHR.
It won't happen now, Cameron's Foreign Secretary.
But then nothing's ever going to happen. So, you know, one of the things that they keep saying about Braverman, she didn't actually do anything, because her hands were constantly tied. She wanted to do the things that we want her to do. We, the British people, are sick of what's going on. We want the boat stopped. We're sick of being... It is... I mean, what do you call a load of men arriving in boats daily all the time? I mean, she used a word that everybody said... Expensive. She used the word invasion. No one will let her get on with her job. Yeah. So, you know, it's not fair. We have to come out of the ECHR if we're going to have autonomy and rule Britain the way we want it ruled.
Not going to happen now. Cameron's back in the cabinet. I mean, Rishi was lukewarm mindset.
Cleverly, of course.
Yeah, but Cameron, there's no way Cameron would come back into cabinet if he thought that was going to happen.
I think that's absolutely right. The idea of Britain abandoning international law because we don't happen to like a particular decision.
We've got our own laws.
We have our own laws. Oh,
What's wrong with our laws?
But they are our laws. I mean, the Human Rights Act is actually comes straight from the European Convention on Human Rights. So what is British law is this law. To come out of it means that we're saying, oh, we won't follow the international norms.
But why can't we have our own laws, Nigel? Why can't it be? Why does it have to come from international law? Why does it have to come from?
This is our law because this was incorporated into British law under the Human Rights
Act. But we can unincorporate it.
Yes, we can unincorporate it, but we're then saying to the rest of the world, OK, we won't actually follow the norms there. That could do huge damage to our trading relationships with other countries.
It's Italy, Germany, Denmark are all looking at similar schemes to our Rwanda scheme. They're catching up with us.
It will
these are countries that are in the European Union.
Sure, and it may well be that when the Supreme Court comes back tomorrow, we'll actually hear a rather more nuanced kind of verdict. It won't be a straightforward, you can't send anyone to Rwanda, or you can send everyone to Rwanda. It might be that they will come back with something in between. We'll have to see what the result of that is. But the idea that we should then leave the European Court seems to me madness when we win about half the cases there that we take.
But they are unelected, Nigel. Why should we be part of this when we've got our own elected people to judge what we do in this country? Why do we have to go to Europe?
Well, then why do we join the United Nations? Why do we join NATO?
Why do we come out of as well? Blimey, don't get me going.
Why do we join international organisations? Because we are part of the civilised world.
No,
and to withdraw from that would be a huge mistake.
The civilised world has lost its mind and it's lost its common sense. We don't have a civilised world anymore. I mean, one of the stories we're about to discuss is, whether women can have a what's it? Anyway, I'm not going to go into what's civilised and what's normal. We've got to have common sense back. We need to come out of all these places that are telling us what we should think.
And become totally isolated.
No, we won't be isolated. We'll grow a spine. People will go, look at Britain again. It's great.
No, they won't. They'll just ignore Britain. Britain will have no importance whatsoever. The idea that we have a voice at the UN Security Council is really important for international relations. The fact we're a member of NATO is good for our defence.
Who's running the UN Council now? Who is running the UN Council now? Who's been given the role?
I don't know who's actually got the presidency of the UN, but at the moment, we're still on the Security Council.
If I'm not wrong. So please don't tell me that we should be part of the UN. It's ridiculous.
Well, no. I mean, the presidency is a rotating thing. What we're talking about is the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, of which we are one.
One's China.
Yeah, one is China, the other one's Russia. Yeah.
2 rogue states.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
So why do we want to be part of that? Why can't we have our own rules for our country and be a beacon of light to show the way instead of trailing and following in laws and rules that we do not agree with?
Because it's an international organisation and we have a global world and we should be part of that, to argue against China, to argue against Russia.
That sounds like word salad to me. It's just like you want to be part of the club, even though the club is not good for us. Why do you want to be part of a club?
But the idea of pulling the drawbridge up on Britain and saying, well, we'll have nothing to do with the rest of the world.
We are going to stand firm and be something that people look at and say, this is Great Britain, this is why it got the name
Great Britain anymore.
We'll be much greater than we have been in the past 20 years.
We might as well be Switzerland. We might as well just abandon our army.
It's a rather nice place to live, Switzerland, actually. I'm not against that.
It is terribly dull, though, unfortunately.
I'm not against Switzerland.
No, I quite like to be Switzerland, to be fair.
We have to call it
round one.
Yes, we've got to move on.
Right, it's the King's birthday, and to mark His Majesty's 75th year, the King and Queen will launch the Coronation Food Project, which seeks to bridge the gap between food waste and food need. And we're going to be discussing that after a quick break. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Storm Debbie may have cleared away, but there's still going to be plenty of downpours around today and gusty winds, particularly already across the southwest of England. Narrow band of very heavy rain is working across southern counties of England. A lot of spray, a lot of surface water on the roads, flashes of lightning, rumbles of thunder and blustery wind. The Met Office do have a yellow warning in place for those thundery showers. Elsewhere, there'll be quite a few showers through the day, but some sunny spells over the Midlands,
Wales, parts of East Anglia as well. In the sunshine, we might squeak into the teens, but further north, lots of showers and lots of cloud, feeling fairly chilly. Temperatures 9 to 11 Celsius at best. More showers to come this evening as well for central Scotland, feeding into Northern Ireland. Frequent heavy showers here and across northern England. Further south, well, a few, particularly in the southwest, but many places will be dry and largely clear as well. Some clearer skies and lighter winds in northern Scotland could allow temperatures to get down to freezing, but for most will be in single figures, 6 to 8 Celsius in most towns and cities. Bit of a north-south split then to start tomorrow. There'll be showers across the north of Northern Ireland, feeding into northern England, central and southern Scotland. Northern Scotland seeing a mostly dry and fine day, and much of the south actually having sunny spells and not too many showers through Wednesday. Decent chance of a dry day here. Still on the cool side for most though, 7 to 9 across the north, 10 to 13 further south.
Thank you, Alex. Now, still to come, from Brexit to banking to kangaroo balls. It's official. Nigel Farage is in the jungle. Should I have said testicles?
I think so.
It didn't have the same pleasing alliteration.
Can we have a bit of decorum? This is GB News, you know.
This is GB News, the People's Channel. Don't go anywhere.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 11 a.m. on Monday, the 14th of November. This is GB News. This is good morning.
How long are we going to be doing this
is
for?
Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
It's a bit of a tongue twister. You know who we are by now.
I hope so.
I hope so. Now, Rishi rolls the dice. The Prime Minister's reshuffle has sparked anger from the Tory right. His new cabinet has met for the first time earlier this morning. Let's have a listen.
Want to build a better future for our children and for our grandchildren, and that is what this team is going to do. Whether it's navigating the crises in Ukraine and the Middle East to demonstrate that we will stand up for our values and provide security for everyone here at home, but also to make the big, bold decisions that will drive change.
Mention the cost of living crisis.
No.
Common sense czar. The Conservative MP Esther McVey of this parish, of course, is going to lead the anti-woke agenda, and she says she's going to stand up for working people in her new job in Rishi's government.
And King Charles turns 75. He'll use his birthday to launch a new scheme to tackle food poverty, and he's apparently expecting a phone call from Prince Harry.
Imagine that would be a rather strange call. And Brexit to Bush Tucker, our very own Nigel Farage. He's gone in the jungle. Does the prospect of him eating live insects and camels' testicles interest you? It does me.
And we got you to say testicles.
I'm not saying
live on air.
The word beginning with B that you use. We want a bit of decorum here. Bit of decorum here. So we're going to be talking about the King, and we're going to be talking to somebody who's not a great champion of the King, who worked with him very closely, so that'd be quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know your thoughts this morning, gbviews@gbnews.com. I can't lie, I am dying to see Nigel in the jungle. I watch it every year anyway, absolutely love it. I'm not quite sure when it starts, we will let you know. First though, here's your very latest news with Sophia.
Good morning, it's 1 minute past 11. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister says his new cabinet is the team to make big, bold decisions to drive change. He addressed his new cabinet for the first time after his dramatic reshuffle, which saw David Cameron make an unexpected return to frontline politics. In a major gamble, Rishi Sunak gave the former Prime Minister a peerage in order to make him Foreign Secretary. Lord Cameron admits such a return is not usual, but says he wants to support Mr Sunak through a difficult job at a hard time. The Prime Minister addressed his cabinet and pledged to change the country for the better.
I know that this strong and united team is going to deliver that change for everybody. We've got an important week coming up. On Wednesday, we'll have inflation numbers. We'll also have the Supreme Court ruling on our Rwanda plan. And next Wednesday, the Chancellor will be delivering an important autumn statement. And across all of that, I'm confident that we can demonstrate to the country that we're making progress on the priorities that I set out at the beginning of the year. And looking around this table, I know that we have an energetic and enthusiastic team that is going to deliver for the country. So let's get to work.
Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury Darren Jones told GB News he thinks Rishi Sunak's move is desperate.
My observation would be that having David Cameron as Foreign Secretary doesn't solve Rishi Sunak's problems. In fact, it's quite odd to me that Rishi Sunak has had to look to the past to try to bring back a quote-unquote grown-up to help get control of the Conservative Party. If Rishi Sunak was a good enough Prime Minister, he would be able to get a grip of this, and he's failed to do so.
US President Joe Biden has told Israel the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza must be protected as fighting continues. It comes after the World Health Organization said Gaza's main hospital is no longer functioning. Israel has accused Hamas of having a command and control center under the hospital, which the terror group denies. Meanwhile, the Israeli military has said it is in the process of transferring incubators from a hospital in Israel to Gaza. The move could facilitate the evacuation of newborn babies after distress calls from the neonatal unit as fuel runs out. The pace of wage growth has eased back from a record level, with no change in the UK's unemployment rate. Figures from the Office for National Statistics found average wages, excluding bonuses, were 7.7% higher than a year earlier in the 3 months to September. That's down from the revised 7.9% level registered last month. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has welcomed the growth and said his autumn statement will set out his plans to get people back to work. The government is considering making the chickenpox vaccine available on the NHS following a recommendation from scientists. The Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation say the jab should be given to youngsters in 2 doses when they're 12 months and 18 months old. It says data from countries suggests the vaccine would dramatically reduce circulating chickenpox and prevent most severe cases in children. The committee has also recommended a temporary catch-up programme for older children be included. Police have arrested 115 Just Stop Oil protesters after they slow-marched on the A41 and blocked a major road. A group marched on Hendon Way yesterday morning, including the Brent Cross flyover. The group claims the Metropolitan Police had blocked the flyover, preventing protesters from clearing the road. The force responded by saying all the activists have been arrested as they showed no intention of leaving the road. They made arrests along the road and transported them to custody. Applications have been opened for Britons to register their XL bully dogs from exemption before the breed is made illegal. Owners who want to keep their dogs have to apply to an exemption scheme or choose to have their dog euthanised and apply for compensation. It will be illegal to own an XL bully from the 1st of February next year. They must be registered by the end of January. A thunderstorm warning is in effect as heavy rain continues to batter the country. The Met Office says there's a yellow weather warning in place for the south of England, and the Environment Agency has issued 11 flood warnings. Storm Debbie is set to clear, but wet and windy weather will linger. Drivers and those thinking of taking a bus should expect their journeys to be longer due to spray, standing water and hail. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Good morning, it's 11:06. We've got a fresh cup of tea each.
We have. Very nice. Made by that very nice Tonya.
We've even got some biscuits back here.
Yeah.
But we won't eat those on air, but we've been reading what you've been
Which I
saying at
paid
home.
for because GB News don't provide them. But they do provide the tea.
Colin said, what a disgrace this government is. This is about the reshuffle, and David Cameron, the only person who was sticking up for the British people, has been sacked. Sunak is a weak snowflake bowing down to anything to keep his job. We didn't even vote for him. Where's this great democracy we're supposed to have? Cameron is another snowflake with his own personal agenda. Tell us what you really think next time, Colin. We're going to have a race war in this country soon. I bet the army are on the streets within 12 months. Most people I speak to will be voting for the Reform Party.
Well, they do think... Well, I mean, it was interesting, Ben Habib saying that they gained hundreds of members yesterday, and I have to say, when I heard... When the shocks subsided a bit about Cameron, I thought this will be a recruiting agent for reform.
Every MP that I've heard speaking out against it from whatever political hue has mentioned reform in interviews about
And Tory MPs are worried about it because if you remember at the last election, Nigel Farage stood down a lot of Brexit Party candidates in Tory seats because he wanted to get behind Boris Johnson because he thought Boris would get Brexit done, which he did to a point.
Yeah.
But that's not going to happen this time. The Reform are going to stand against every single Tory MP. Every single one.
They will. Richard has said, for the life of me, I cannot understand this love-in with Suella Braverman. The pro-Palestine marches were not only happening in London, but indeed throughout the UK. Instead of blaming the Met Police Chief, who has no jurisdiction for the rest of the UK, she, as Home Secretary, should have used her powers to ban the pro-Palestinian terrorist marches, but she chose not to. I'm delighted she's gone. Let me make it clear, Suella Braverman is a coward.
But the law is, I hear what you're saying, the law is, it is the Home Secretary can only ban it on the advice of the operational police officer, who's the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, who said he didn't have enough intelligence to say to her the burden of evidence wasn't there. She wanted to ban it, but, and the Prime Minister said he wanted it stopped. Well, I still can't understand why they just didn't call the blimmin' thing off. But anyway, there we are. Because all we did was talk about the march rather than talking about remembrance, which we should talk about remembrance.
Well, Sam has said the PM should have stood in support with Suella, despite her choice of words and the context used. I'm not sure the PM is tough as he should be in the right way. What is the Minister of Common Sense? What is the definition or the policy remit? It's great for Esther's promotion.
Yeah, I suspect from what Philip was saying, she was somewhat torn about taking that job.
How do you sit around the Cabinet, though? Like, how do you genuinely sit there, especially as a state-educated woman amongst all those public school boys, and when they say, you know, cleverly, what do you have in mind as Home Secretary? And David Cameron, what do you have in mind as Foreign Secretary? Esther, what are you going to do as the Common Sense Minister? It's just a bit patronising. How does she own that role?
What she will do, she'll only go to Cabinet when she's got something relevant to say. when she said, I've decided we have to. And look, Steve Barclay, it was the Health Secretary until yesterday, if I had £1 for the number of times I read, he was going to stop these wretched health trusts spending millions on diversity schemes. It never happened. So is she going to have the authority to stop it? Why would the NHS have to spend a penny on diversity schemes when it's the most diverse employer in Europe?
But then she has to go to the Health Secretary and say, why aren't you using your common sense?
Exactly. Well,
they should all just have some.
Let's hope so. Now, Rishi Sunak is facing a backlash from right-wing Tories over the sacking of Suella Braverman as Home Secretary and bringing in the High Priest of the Remainers, David Cameron, as Foreign Secretary.
So early this morning, Rishi's new cabinet met for the first time. Let's have a listen to what was...
We want to build a better future for our children and for our grandchildren, and that is what this team is going to do, whether it's navigating the crises in Ukraine and the Middle East to demonstrate that we will stand up for our values and provide security for everyone here at home, but also to make the big, bold decisions that will drive change. A new approach to infrastructure spending, ushering in a generation of children that will grow up smoke-free, reforms to how we approach net zero to save families thousands of pounds, and radically reforming our education system with more teachers, higher standards, and more apprenticeships. That's the change that we're going to deliver. And looking around this table, I know that we have an energetic and enthusiastic team that is going to deliver for the country. So let's get to work. Thanks very much.
So, and I think
they don't look very energetic.
And so if you were listening on the radio, David Cameron was almost out of shot to the very last minute, sitting opposite him. I was fascinated where he'd sit. But the Chancellor of the Exchequer sat to his left, who is the most senior politician after the Prime Minister, and the woman on the right was a civil servant. And Cameron was smiling broadly and leading the clapping. It's going to be interesting because you've got the big boy and the little boy, and the little boy is Rishi, because Rishi had only been an MP for a year when Cameron flounced out of number 10 after he lost the referendum.
By the way, we don't normally get a glimpse of cabinet meetings like that.
Very rarely.
So just as a little kind of, you know, start of term, new team, just going to... Anyway, right, let's talk.
I think if you wanted that, if they'd released that clip, they probably should have used the expression cost of living crisis.
Quite.
Because it wasn't mentioned. Chris Hope.
Chris Hope.
He's in number 10. He's outside number 10. And we're also joined by the Sun's political columnist, Trevor Gavin. But first we're going to talk to Chris Hope. Chris, it's raining. Is it raining on Cameron's... Is it raining on Rishi's parade? Because quite a lot of Tory MPs now are pretty not too pleased with the way this reshuffle has panned out.
Yeah, the back end of Storm Debbie is now dumping its rain here in 10 Downing Street. Yeah, you mentioned there how it all looked. Of course, those seats are set out in order of priority. So the reason why the former PM, David Cameron, is opposite the current PM, Mr Sunak, is because he's the Foreign Secretary. And that's where he sits. And to his left, of course, Jeremy Hunt. Yes, and definitely, you remember, don't you, Andrew, back in the day when David Owen was mocked with little David Steele in his pocket. I can imagine those adverts, can't you, for the Labour Party at the next election. You know, who are you voting for, the unelected David Cameron or little Rishi sitting in his pocket? I mean, you can imagine how that might be weaponised against the current PM. I mean, the problem of the appointment of David Cameron is what is the answer to the question he was posing? Why? I mean, I guess he's definitely a senior figure on the world stage, and that's a good thing. He knows people. He can talk about Ukraine. He was there when, of course, Russia invaded Crimea back in 2015. Just look over my shoulder. See who's here. There's Grant Shapps, Defence Secretary, leaving cabinet. But in fact, talking about Ukraine at the same time as when he walked out there. But yes, no question. Elsewhere on the foreign policy, questionable on the relationships with China. Ian Duncan-Smith telling me on the Farage programme last night how worried he is about that. And also big concerns about his lobbying with Greensill. Is not out the woods here, David Cameron, and people are concerned about the way he was appointed. We are told he's a peer, but in the list given us by number 10 last night, he's called David Cameron. Yeah. We're waiting for the picture of him in red ermine. And the question you've got to ask there, Andrew and Bev, is what's wrong with the other 360 or so Tory MPs elected in 2019? Why can't one of them, one of the elected people, become Foreign Secretary? Why are we relying on an appointed friend of Rishi Sunak? In fact, why can't a peer, an existing peer, be made Foreign Secretary? Perhaps it's you, me, or perhaps Bev can get a job next time.
She wants to be Education Secretary.
I'm itching. Absolutely. Well, we know that... we know
give her the job.
We know that GB News is on in the background at 10 Downing Street all day. Morning all. So, you know...
Yeah. Well, crucially, Bev... Bev, crucially, it's not on... I was going to say it's not on in the policy unit, but it's actually watched by all the staff in the canteen. So the real people watch it, not the ones who are doing all the policy work. That's what I understand it. So, but you asked there about the backlash. I understand there's quite a strong statement imminently coming out from the New Conservatives group. This is a group of Danny Kruger, Miriam Cates. These are young, new Tory MPs who want to reshape the party. They are going to issue a strong statement about the way Suella Braverman was treated. We are waiting to hear from her. She says she's got more to say. We're hoping she might say it on GBNews. We don't know. But we're waiting to hear what Suella Braverman might say. And I think whatever she says next will form the narrative of the first few days of this new government that the PM has set up.
All right, that's Chris Hope, who is our political editor. We're going to be joined now by the eminence greaser political columnist, Trevor Kavanagh of The Sun. Trevor, morning to you. You and I have covered so many reshuffles in our time, Trevor, but I absolutely did not see David Cameron coming in any shape or form. And the more I think about it, I think Rishi Sunak has probably made a strategic mistake.
Yes, my first reaction to the reshuffle news was that it was a disaster bordering on a catastrophe, and I've been struggling ever since to try and find reasons to change my mind, and frankly I haven't. What I'm waiting for now is the resignation or sacking of Esther McVey the moment she comes up with the sort of common sense policies that she should do in that job. I mean, if Suella Braverman is going to be sacked for saying what the overwhelming majority of the British people believe, then nobody's safe in this government. And I think that the point that Chris made about the number of people who are actually serving as Tory MPs who have been overlooked in it, I think that's going to be a very telling point in the coming weeks and months.
Trevor, how does a decision like this come about to bring David Cameron in? What conversations will have been going on to arrive at that decision?
Well, the upside of this, if you accept the spin, is that David Cameron has a large number of contacts and a lobbying book ready to go for all the people he knew and met and got to know well as Prime Minister, especially in the Middle East. The big point that has been stressed with me is that we have a Middle East war. We don't want it to spread, and that David Cameron will be out there trying to resurrect or breathe new life into the Abraham Accords between Israel and the other Arab states around the region. Now, whether that's possible in the circumstance, I hesitate to guess, but that's one of the things. And also the idea that Brexit is now dead and that we are in a post-Brexit era in which David Cameron and others have accepted the fact that that's where we are. But we now have two of the top three officers of state, the Chancellor and the Foreign Secretary, who are devout Remainers. And I don't see how that can possibly bury Brexit as an issue in the minds of many, many Tory voters, especially those in the Red Wall.
And Trevor, they've also, haven't they, lost a political cudgel for which they could beat Labour in the form of Sir Keir Starmer, who, of course, was the architect of Labour's second referendum plan, because Rishi Sunak has now brought back into his cabinet David Cameron, who opposed Brexit and was the architect of Project Fear, which was lies paid for by the taxpayer-funded Treasury.
Well, I think you just expressed that better than I can, actually, Andrew. I think that Project Fear was absolutely unforgivable and inexcusable, and indeed funded by us, the taxpayer, to lie to the public. And had it not been for that enormous campaign, which was involved the civil service, the BBC and everybody else, well, actually not so much the BBC on this, in that particular context, but all the materials and resources of the state were aimed at trying to persuade people that it would be a disaster to leave the European Union. And that was led by David Cameron particularly.
Do you feel that Labour have made any political capital out of this, as you say, a disaster verging on a catastrophe, Trevor? I think all I heard from them was they said, we need a general election now. Well, that's not going to happen. That's a stupid statement to make.
I don't think they need to, though. I think, Beverly, the situation is that it's all going... They can happily stay silent while the Tory party tears itself apart on this. And anything they say will be lost in the bubbling anger antagonism that this has stirred among certainly the right-wing members of the Tory party.
What finished it for me, Trevor, was when I heard Michael Heseltine burbling away on the BBC, saying what a wonderful appointment it was, and all Rishi needed to do now was to bring back George Osborne too, and it would be a double whammy. And I just was beating, metaphorically, my head on my desk thinking, if Heseltine thinks this is good news, it must be appalling.
Well, indeed. And, again, yesterday I was looking for people who were supporting this, and the only person who did actually pop his head above the parapet was Lord Heseltine, who is about as discredited a figure in the eyes of many Tories in the voting public. I mean, if you look at the modern Conservative Party, Lord Heseltine is a complete dinosaur in relation to those. And the fact that he is supporting this and suggesting George Osborne might join, I mean, that's an appallingly sick joke.
Yeah.
OK, thank you very much, Trevor. Trevor Kavanagh there from The Sun.
It always tells it as it is, does Trevor?
I know, it's fabulous, isn't it? I was just looking at what Keir Starmer tweeted from yesterday. You think that might be a golden opportunity for him to really make some capital out of events. So he tweeted pictures of him at Neasden Temple celebrating Diwali. And that's it.
But what he'll do, well, I guess I don't know, I'm not in we can talk to Nigel Nelson about it. He's very close to Labour in a way I'm not, but I guess the strategy is let the Tories fall out in public, and then on Wednesday at Prime Minister's Questions tomorrow, he'll have to have a couple of humdingers. But Sunak will be prepared for the questions and the dark jibes about nobody's good enough in the Commons. So it'll be interesting then. But I think it was interesting what Nigel Nelson did say. That Labour actually, when they get beyond the sound bites, they're a bit fearful that Rishi's moving on to the centre ground.
But in terms of their comms strategy and reaching the British public...
They've got a useless comms strategy.
We would have been talking about what Keir Starmer had to say in the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
I've been regularly checking his Twitter feed to see what he's going to tell me that I can read out to you.
They put out Pat McFadden, who's going to be in charge of their election campaigning strategy. Pat who? I can hear everybody who's listening on the radio and watching saying, Pat who? You want to hear from the Labour leader? Because it was a reshuffle, a big reshuffle. And look, Rishi, again, his people will say most reshuffles don't cut through. This one has cut through, because here we are, 24 hours later, we're still talking about the fallout over the restoration of David Cameron and the defenestration of Suella Braverman, who is not going to go quietly. But I'm told she's not going to make a personal statement, which she could in the Commons, which case she would be heard in silence. That's how Geoffrey Howe did it all those years ago when he destroyed Mrs Thatcher.
Oh, is that right?
It was a personal statement. Norman Lamont did it too when he said John Major's government gives the impression of being in office but not in power.
And Suella Braverman's not going to do that?
I'm told she isn't, but she's got other ways she can make her voice known, and she is going to make a decisive intervention later this week.
We know she likes writing controversial articles in newspapers.
Maybe she'll do it in my newspaper, The Daily Mail, or maybe, Suella, if you're listening, we like you here on GB News, come on, and we'd love to see you on this show, but if you can't do this show, we've got quite a few others you could choose from. But we prefer it on this one. How's that?
Right, still to come. There'll be a 41-gun salute and then a 62-gun salute.
And we're not sure why.
The King's 75th birthday. All I got was a birthday card and a lovely video from GB News. But you are with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
And it's 11:26 with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Beth Turner.
Now, King Charles is celebrating his 75th birthday with the launch of a project to help people facing food poverty. And he's also going to have a reception to celebrate nurses and midwives working in the UK.
We're hoping to talk to the Royal Broadcaster Helen Ashard and the former head of Royal Protection Di Davies, who joins us to celebrate the King's birthday. Now, we're going to get the 62-gun salute, so I've done my homework, Bev.
Oh, yeah.
The reason it's a 62-gun salute...
Is it a 41 and then a 62?
Well, it's because it will be discharged from a Royal Fortress. That will probably be the Tower of London. So there's a 21 gun are fired. They have an additional 20 volleys added, plus a further 20 for being in the City of London. Not the most interesting explanation, but that is the explanation. Now, Helena is there, and Di are there too. Let's go to... Di, you worked with Prince of Wales. Morning to you both, Prince of Wales, for many years. Was he easy to work with?
Well, a very good morning to you. While we're on the subject of 21-gun salutes, as I am, he had 22 when he came to Wales in 1969, because the Welsh terrorists actually put 3 or 4 bombs in and around Carnarvon and some in Holyhead. So I'm reminded of that, and I hope today's commemoration of his birthday will go a lot more smoothly. I remember going to Dunblane with him when we were commemorating the tragic death and the shooting of all those children up there. And it showed me the empathy of the man. And without whatever else he has right or wrong, he has huge human empathy towards those less privileged. But he's a complex character, in my opinion. And if you cross him, as I understand it, you won't get back in favour. As I say, an incredibly interesting individual, and I think he is getting on with the job of being king very well indeed, despite some of the misgivings some people may have had of it.
Yeah, which brings me to Helena. Obviously, when we lost the Queen, there was a sort of nervousness about whether King Charles would continue to remain a popular monarch. He's doing very well, isn't he?
I think he's doing fantastically. He's really, really good at what he does. He's a real statesman. I think people really just doubted that he could go out and almost lead, and he surprised everybody. He's been working towards this for a long, long time, and it's amazing. He's got all these legacy contracts, these projects that just spanning 5 years, etc. And it's a party time. Not to forget, it's his 75th birthday. Obviously, he had the tea party last night. But so the fanfare continues. But it's not a true sort of party as such. The royals really don't celebrate birthdays as normal. They'll have like a little party in the evening, but it's work as normal.
Yeah, Di, let's bring Di back in. What is it? As somebody like Prince Charles, as he's King Charles now, he is constantly vulnerable to attack, isn't he? Because he's very exposed, he insists on being seen, did that make your job very difficult to ensure his protection?
Well, he's fortunate in the sense that he's had protection since birth. And as a consequence, the people doing it are extremely well trained, know him well, know his movements, know his likes and dislikes, and accordingly, each event is carefully planned. So there is a great deal of planning that goes into his protection. But, as I mentioned, since 1969, when he was invested in North Wales, people have tried to hurt him. And indeed, back in 1983, from memory, in the Dominion Theatre, the IRA tried to blow him up, and Princess Diana, along with Duran Duran. Again, not so long ago in Ireland, 2015, 6 men were arrested then for plotting to cause him harm when he came to commemorate his uncle. So, you constantly have to be aware. And the Republican movement, since he has become king, I've observed there's a great deal more incidents where people are throwing eggs and the rest of it. So those protecting him now really have their job cut out, because there are elements who would do him harm, in my opinion.
OK, thank you both. Fascinating. Royal broadcaster Helena Chard and the former head of Royal Protection, Di Davies, there.
And at midday, we will be broadcasting the Royal Salute. So if you're watching, Your Majesty, happy birthday.
Happy birthday. You know what I think whenever I see him? I think 75. Most people are winding down a bit.
Yeah, he's just beginning.
And he has a busy schedule. I mean, I don't feel deeply sorry for him. He has quite a lot.
He's a workaholic. So after official dinners, he then goes into his study and he's on the phone. He rings people at 1 in the morning, drives them mad, let me tell you. Rings them in first thing in the morning. He's emailing. He agonises about the state of the world. I mean, he is a troubled man in many ways. And he is troubled.
Anyway, and happy birthday, King Charles. I hope your troubles are abating a little. Right, desperate plea. Change of tone. The mother of murder victim James Bulger has begged the parole board overseeing the potential release of John Venables not to set him free as a hearing takes place this week.
Chickenpox jab due. Advisors tell the NHS that all toddlers should receive vaccinations. That and much more after your morning news.
It's 11:32. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister says his new cabinet is the team to make big, bold decisions to drive change. He addressed his new cabinet for the first time after his dramatic reshuffle, which saw David Cameron make an unexpected return to frontline politics. In a major gamble, Rishi Sunak gave the former Prime Minister a peerage in order to make him Foreign Secretary. Lord Cameron admits such a return is not usual, but says he wants to support Mr Sunak through a difficult job at a hard time. The Prime Minister addressed his cabinet and pledged to change the country for the better.
That this strong and united team is going to deliver that change for everybody. We've got an important week coming up. On Wednesday, we'll have inflation numbers. We'll also have the Supreme Court ruling on our Rwanda plan. And next Wednesday, the Chancellor will be delivering an important autumn statement. And across all of that, I'm confident that we can demonstrate to the country that we're making progress on the priorities that I set out at the beginning of the year. And looking around this table, I know that we have an energetic and enthusiastic team that is going to deliver for the country. So let's get to work.
US President Joe Biden has told Israel the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza must be protected as fighting continues. It comes after the World Health Organization said Gaza's main hospital is no longer functioning. Israel has accused Hamas of having a command and control center under the hospital, which the terror group denies. A thunderstorm warning is in effect as heavy rain continues to batter the country. The Met Office says there's a yellow weather warning in place for the south of England, and the Environment Agency has issued 11 flood warnings. Storm Debbie is set to clear, but wet and windy weather will linger. Drivers and those who are taking a bus should expect their journeys to be longer due to spray, standing water and hail. And you can get more on all those stories by visiting our website at gbnews.com.
For exclusive, limited edition and rare gold coins that are always newsworthy, Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2287 and €1.1462 euros. The price of gold is £1,584 and 53 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,396 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, I'm excited, aren't you? I'm excited.
About Nigel Farage.
Nigel's in the jungle.
Not as excited as he was about apparently being offered £1.5 million.
Yeah. He's got to pay quite a lot of tax on it because he has to pay tax in Australia, tax here, and his agent. But I'm not breaking my heart. £1.5 million. Someone said, I wouldn't do it for £1.5 million. I'd do it for £500,000.
Of course you would. I mean, look, we are delighted that Nigel Farage is going to be in the jungle. But what do you think at home? I'd love to know. GBviews at gbnews.com. There are people threatening to boycott the show. Those who don't like him, don't like his politics.
Well, why boycott it? Why not go and watch it and see what you read? You'll see the other side of Nigel, side that we know very well.
Absolutely.
He's personable, he's fun, he's generous, he's good fun. And let me tell you, if you wanted to go down the pub, you had a choice between Nigel Farage and David Cameron. Farage, hands down.
Yeah, every single time.
And he'd buy the drinks.
Yeah, he would buy the drinks. So we're going to be discussing that anyway in just a moment. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified.
I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Well, he's already done it. Nigel Farage has managed to get under the skin of a number of lefty-lovey celebrities. Hooray for that, after being unveiled of one of this year's I'm a Celebrity campmates. Here's what he had to say.
Hello. Oh, hello. Yeah, no, I'm a celebrity. I'm used to the annual call. Well, I mean, I normally say no, but I'm, you know, a bit more thoughtful about it this year. Oh God, that's short notice. Well, to be honest, I'm actually off fishing next week, so it's a little bit tricky in terms of the dates. But yeah. How much? Good Lord. Well, I'll see you in the jungle.
That was how Nigel announced himself going on the jungle in his own terms. And I love the fact that he didn't shy away from the motivation, which was largely the fact that they've offered him tons of money, Nigel.
$1.5 million.
But why else for now for Nigel? Because he's riding a bit of a popularity wave at the moment.
Yeah, and probably wants to actually capitalise on that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he has turned it down previously. He's always been quite proud of turning it down. You do wonder where he's going to get his beer and cigarettes from in the jungle, because I'm not sure he could live without those two things.
I think you can have cigarettes, but he won't. Well, he'll get the occasional beer. They do it as a bit of a stunt on the show, don't they? But apparently he didn't drink beer or tea or coffee for 5 days in the run-up.
Oh,
to
right.
prepare himself.
Right.
He's trying to detox.
Well, he's remarkably good-humoured then on that basis.
Yeah.
and he's lost weight.
Yes, already.
Because not drinking for 5 days.
But what he does say, the serious point is, he says, look, this is a programme that's watched by young people.
Yeah, it is.
He feels he needs to get to young people. I think that shows that he's still got ambitions within politics for the future.
Tonya, your daughter Antigone did Love Island, so you know the pros and cons of going on to reality shows. Do you think this will work out well for Nigel?
I think it'll work out well for Nigel, as it did actually for my daughter, because they're of good character. And I think that's the thing that shines through. You know, everyone has these preconceived ideas of what Nigel's like. And maybe I had them before I met him myself.
Me too.
But, you know, having gone to lunch with the man and seen how charming he is, and how sensible he is, and how moderate he is, you know, all this kind of media lies have been about him, I think he will really kind of get a whole new generation of people following him. My only thought is that he was doing so well politically. Will this stop him politically or enable him politically? I'm not sure about that.
It's a balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah.
He may win even more admirers and supporters, or it could go wrong.
I don't believe...
You're at the mercy of the editors.
You're at the mercy of the editors, which is one thing.
We don't get a live feed.
Yeah, this is that's the only thing that I would say is really difficult, that, you know, the editors can make you look, even if you are the most wonderful person on earth, they can make you look bad.
ITV are paying a record amount of money for Nigel Farage. They do not want Nigel Farage voted out in week 1.
That's very true.
Because they would be losing a big investment. So those editors, I think, actually may do him a favour. Because, look, Nigel, you've known him for years as well, Nigel. Yeah. He's great company, isn't he?
Always great company.
Even people on the left who despise his politics.
That's right. I mean, he's unusual amongst politicians in that he's really interested in other people's opinions.
Yeah.
And he listens. A bit like Jeremy Corbyn, actually, does the same thing. I appreciate their politics are somewhat different.
Don't put him in the jungle. Unless we can leave him there.
but he does listen to people, and that's one of the things that'll come across when he's in the jungle. He'll be interested in the other people who are there and want to hear from them.
Let's hope so.
Do you think it will enhance his political appeal?
Depends if anything goes wrong. He's got a lot of nasty things to eat and a few and the various Bush Tucker trials to get through. Provided he shows, a bit of bravery to go and do that. He'll be
Matt Hancock's confounded all of us. I thought it would be a disaster for him, but he got in the last 3.
No, exactly. I mean, in fact, in fairness to Matt Hancock in the jungle, he actually did quite well.
Did.
Don't
even get started with me and Tanya on Matt Hancock.
He turns my stomach.
Me too.
Can't talk about it.
But you know who else is in the jungle? Is a guy called Fred Sirac, who is from Britain's... Was it called First Dates?
Yes, First Dates.
First Dates. And he's the maitre d' at the restaurant on First Dates. And he also does that show with Gordon Ramsay and Gino D'Acampo with Fred. Now, Fred is an arch Remainer. He's French, I believe. Yeah. And his life has been turned upside down by Brexit, and he wants to get in conversation, I imagine, with Nigel Farage. So that could be fun work.
That'd be great.
Nigel will be very able to handle him.
Yes, he will. Yes. I mean, the whole thing is that I remember my first conversation about Brexit with him, and that goes back a dozen years. Yeah. And at the end of it all, I thought, no, this is never going to happen. And of course, look what happened.
He is the most significant politician, I think, of the last 20 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Farage, because he got us the referendum, and from David Cameron, of course, who's now the Foreign Secretary, and he won it.
Without ever being an MP?
Yeah. Don't need to be in the Houses of Parliament.
No, that's right.
And this is another platform for him, the jungle. I'll be voting for him. Do you vote to keep them in or vote to get them out? I'm not sure how it works.
Vote to keep them in.
Right, so I'll be voting for him.
Get it the right way round.
Yes, I don't want to vote to get him out.
Let's just go on to this huge story tomorrow. In fact, no, let's I think we touched on that earlier, so let's do this one. There is a charity for endometriosis, which is a health condition that women often suffer from. You can have painful periods, and that's an important issue that needs to be raised awareness of. Who's been made charity chief executive, Tanya?
A trans woman.
How does this happen?
How does this happen? It is... You know, any woman that suffers from endometriosis, I haven't, but I've got loads of friends that have, and they've really struggled. It's a really horrendous thing to have, and it blights your life. Often women don't get it diagnosed till much later. How can you have someone who has no understanding on it?
Who has no womb.
And the thing is, what really drives me nuts is when the charity first announced that she was doing it, it was next to a quote saying, next to a picture that said that it's ridiculous that I've got to my 40s before medical professionals even mentioned endometriosis, which is, it's a joke. This is a biological man.
Yes.
And, you know, I'm the mother of 2 daughters, and I'm so worried about women just getting pushed out of the picture, men taking our jobs.
It's not as if there can't have been enough women out there capable and willing to do the job. This charity is virtue signalling, in my view.
Absolutely virtue signalling. I can't see how it can gain
Nigel's foaming at the mouth
charity.
down the end.
I'm huffing and puffing this end.
Nigel, do you have to be a woman to be the CEO of a charity about women's health?
No, any more than you would have to be a man to run a charity about prostate cancer, for instance. The whole
point
helps
is because you can relate to it.
Well, I mean, the important thing is to understand it. I mean, a doctor doesn't have to actually go through your illness with you to understand the illness that you've got. This is an organisational job. She's CEO of a major charity. I can see if you...
What's her background, then?
Pardon?
What's the background that enables her, qualifies her for this job?
I don't know what her background is.
Well, I bet there isn't a background.
If you are there in an organisational role, it's like being CEO of anything else. There's no reason, for instance, why a young person should not head up Age UK. What you need to do is understand what the issues are you're campaigning on, and then go out there and organise those campaigns.
But this person is quite hateful, calling anyone that doesn't agree that a trans woman is a woman TERFs and calling them out and calling names is quite hateful. And I think that could alienate a lot of women that do have endometriosis, that don't believe that a trans woman is a woman. They are a trans woman. I will not accept, personally, the title of cis woman. I don't know what that means.
Nor do I.
OK, I am a woman. That is what I am.
A cis woman means born as a female, born female and lives as a woman. That is a cis female.
OK, but I don't agree with that. I am a woman.
Hang on,
I'm a female, I'm a woman.
You're born as a female and live as a woman. Why aren't you just a woman, then?
Yes.
You are, but
because trans women want to take the title of women.
Because it differentiates between trans women and cis women.
Exactly.
It's an outrage.
A trans woman is a trans woman.
Is a woman.
Yeah, no, a trans woman is a trans woman.
Why does a woman who's born as a woman, born as a girl, and lives as a woman, is a woman? Why does she have to be called a cis anything?
You don't have to, but at the moment, because of this debate, the extra word has been thrown in.
This is what Estimate Bay has got to stamp out.
This is exactly it. Bev and I are women.
Yes.
This person here is a trans woman.
Yeah.
So if anyone's going to have letters in front of their name to differentiate them because they've decided to change their mind from what they were biologically born, that's fine. But they are the ones that take the letters, not me.
Yeah.
I hadn't realised that's what a cis female is.
Yeah, cis female. So a cis male, I think it's the same for cis male.
Males, yeah.
Well,
I'm not a cis male. I was born a boy. I live as a man, and I might be a sissy, but I'm not a cis bloke.
Exactly.
But I'm not a cis bloke, and I'm not having it. And I'm not having it.
You don't need the extra word.
It's nonsense.
Don't need the extra word.
It's nonsense.
But I think this
I do, but the whole thing is, I also believe that a trans woman is a woman.
Yeah, because
but that's because you believe gender is nurture, not nature. So that you believe that being female or being a woman is the behaviour that you exhibit, the culture that you live by, what goes on in your mind, as opposed to your biological sex.
Yes. Yes,
okay.
and
that's what's important. And that's what.
And in my opinion, that is complete and utter rubbish. And that's all I can say. But in a situation like this, when you're dealing with a women's charity, which is a women's illness, you could really alienate women or women who have got endometriosis that don't agree with maybe the trans debate.
But would you have a doctor?
Then you might alienate them.
Would you object to a male doctor who is a gynaecologist?
No, because there's no one. This person is not calling women that don't agree with trans women terse.
Well, that's
calling them names.
So I didn't know that.
That's what I'm saying. So I don't mind somebody else.
So there's no tolerance on this person's part.
I didn't know that about her. If there is that in her background, she isn't here to defend herself. Of course, she might deny that she's said these things that might be derogatory to female-born women. But I'm somewhere, actually, I have to say, I'm a little bit with Nigel on this. Here's why. I think, Tonya, you would do a really good job of running a charity for, let's say, prostate cancer.
Oh, I agree with you, Bev. I'm in complete agreement. You don't have to have gone through the illness to suffer it. I mean, it's a shame that it's a female illness. You know, we need to promote female jobs. So that's a shame there. But my point is that because she has called out women that don't agree with trans as TERFs and been quite hateful to biological women...
And so that's people like J.K. Rowling?
Yes, J.K. Rowling and me. That would alienate a lot of women that might have endometriosis. So she is not the right person for this job.
She will be judged on how much money does she make for the charity, how much awareness does she generate. I mean, let's be honest, it's been an absolute PR triumph, hasn't it? We're all talking about it because of this appointment. And whether she does a good job for raising awareness of it. It's certainly got us talking about it. We must touch upon this story about the John Venables parole hearing, Nigel. This poor family, Jamie Bulger's parents, who've had 30 years now, I think, of living with having gone through this unimaginable trauma. John Venables, again, is up for parole. He's been in and out of prison.
Yes.
Parents want to be there and the court's saying...
And all the times he's gone back in, it's been child sex-related offences.
Yeah, well, it's been... Yeah, he's been downloading images of children, sexual images of children. So he's been back in prison twice. So he was first released in 2001. He went back into prison in 2010, came out again in 2017, committed a similar offence and went back in again. The issue about about keeping the hearing private is that he has this lifetime lifetime anonymity.
Because they've changed his identity.
Yeah, so they've changed his identity, so we're not allowed to know his real identity, and that is the point about doing it in private. I feel hugely for Denise Bulger. I understand why she's hugely upset about it, but it seems to me the parole board should actually look at this and decide whether or not he remains a danger.
And what do you think of the plan that was in the King's speech, if anybody can remember the King's speech? I had to ask somebody the other day, was the King's speech last week because it was so utterly forgettable? But one of the plans is that ministers can get involved now to overall parole board and say, so if they'd say he can come out, a minister could step and say, no, we can't. Is that right? Should it be a political decision?
I think it can be, yes. I think it rather depends on the circumstances. So the idea that you would get, say, the Attorney General or the Justice Secretary looking at a controversial decision seems to me right, in the same way that they can look at sentencing.
Yeah, because they want to reflect public opinion often.
Well, no, it's not a question of reflecting public opinion. They want to make sure the job has been done properly. Yeah. So from that point of view, it's just an extension of a system that already exists. So, yes, I think they can intervene, but whether they should or not will depend on each individual case.
In this situation, there is a case for good and evil. And that face of that boy, John Venables, is the face of evil. And what he's done is pure evil, that a young child could have tortured another child like that in that way. There is no rehabilitating from this. He's proved it. He is a sick individual. And, you know, I would bring back the death penalty for someone like him once they'd recommitted their crimes. You think, oh, he was a child when he was 10 years old. He's carrying on doing this. He tortured that child. And actually, my friend was the editor for Denise Fergus, now Jamie's mum, when she wrote her book. And my friend had to take 3 months off because it was so disturbing. It's so disgusting. This person is evil. There is no rehabilitating them.
But we should keep the death penalty out of it. I mean, we don't
know that, but he should go into prison and never, ever come out. We shouldn't be wasting our money and time.
We've seen what you say as well about your friend in the book, because Karen Malone, one of the regulars here, she sat here last week and told us that she covered that trial, and she said it shocked her to the core, and a lot of what was said in court was never reported because it was so truly shocking.
This John Venables is the face of evil, and the face of evil needs to stay in prison till he dies.
Yeah, I'm rather with that.
Can we talk about this new NHS advice, which toddlers need to be apparently now, Nigel, given a vaccine against chickenpox? An illness that kids have got for years, and even host chickenpox parties because it's good for their immune system to be exposed to this virus. Why don't they jab for it?
Some of them get it really seriously. And so the idea is that it's a jab that the Joint Committee on Vaccination has approved, waiting for approval from the NHS. You would get it at 12 months and at 18 months. Some children get incredibly ill with it. I was when I was a child.
You're fine now, though, Nigel, aren't you?
Pardon?
You're fine now.
Are you sure? I've recovered since
the Prime Minister.
It's really half a century,
That's how we get our immune systems going, as we get these illnesses. This is another money-making venture for Big Pharma. I'm sorry, it's wrong. I've got 4 children. All of them had chickenpox. I hosted chickenpox parties at my house. It helps with the children's natural immunity. This is wrong. We keep pumping our kids full of these drugs that they do not need. And have they done their due diligence? What are the side effects of these drugs? What are the long-term side effects of these drugs? What is it? Let's have a look at the nature.
It's been used in America and Australia for quite a long time. So as far as anyone knows that these things, this drug is safe, I don't believe, like the COVID jab, that they would put this into children's arms if it wasn't safe.
Can I just ask a question? What is a chickenpox party?
It's if you know that somebody's child's got chickenpox, you go round to their house, so your child can get chickenpox nice and early, get it over and done with.
When they're young, because generally people will have a worse reaction when they're older.
Yeah. For adults, it's more dangerous. And the only problem here is people who don't have the jab. If they get it later on in life, then it can be a much more serious disease. But the point is, it can be serious in children.
But none of us have had the jab.
No, I know, but you probably had chickenpox when you were younger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nigel, you've proved my point for once. Are we in agreement on this?
No, we can't have that. We don't want to agree. Immediately disagree, please.
Can I just ask you both? We didn't cover it with you yet, but I want to talk about Esther McVey being made the Minister for Common Sense. You know Esther. Tonya used to host a show with her on GB News.
We launched GB News together on Saturday morning.
What do you make of this new position? It's a sort of position. Does it feel a bit tokenistic?
I know Esther is brilliant, and she is got a lot of common sense. And what I would have liked to have seen of Esther is to get her a real meaty ministerial.
She was Work and Pension Secretary under Cameron for a while, of course.
That's almost like the worst one you can be, isn't it? It's the most miserable kind of minister you can be.
It really is.
You know, I would have liked her to have had education. I can imagine if she was the Education Minister.
Or Home Secretary.
Or Home Secretary. Or Health, for goodness sake. All the things that need a real injection of common sense. I'm glad that she's in there. I don't know if he's put her in there to shut her up because she, you know, she's a very...
No, he's put her in there to even up the balance because they've sacked the right winger, Braverman, so you bring in Esther to hopefully placate the right. It hasn't worked.
No, I don't... Unless he gives her a better ministerial project, then no.
What do you think, Nigel? Should she be a bit offended by this?
Yeah, in the sense I don't know what a Minister for Wokery is going to mean.
Well, we asked her husband and he wasn't clear.
Oh, well, there you go.
Philip Davies is a fine man.
I don't know what she will do is the problem, and what you shouldn't do is appoint a minister without giving them a proper brief.
She can sort out this cis-female nonsense.
Well, she'll be able to educate you.
Don't want any of that in government.
I have trans friends, and none of them want to be called. None of them want me to be called a cis woman. I'm a woman.
Maddening.
And so hopefully she will sort out things like this.
That would be good.
She's going to come up against such a huge backlash, isn't she?
Well, it depends what she does.
Well, exactly, and that's what none of us particularly
We don't know what the brief
how she
is.
can be judged on. How does she get judged on success?
The danger of a job, a minister without portfolio, is it's without the portfolio bit that it takes a while to find out what your portfolio is.
We have to draw your attention to the fact it is the King's 75th birthday, and any second now we are expecting the 41-gun salute, which will be... there we are. If you're listening on the radio, the cannons, if they're cannons, are they called cannons? Are in Green Park, near Buckingham Palace. It'll be 41-gun salute, and then at 1 p.m. you get the 62-gun salute. I did explain why it happened. It's quite boring. Why
Unlike these pictures, which are superb. We've had quite a lot of pageantry this year, haven't we? We've had so much going on with the coronation. We've had... what else have we had? What else have I missed? We've had... it feels like we had the King's speech last week.
And the coronation, the funeral last year, but he wanted this 70th birthday to be low-key, but this is a formality for the monarch, and I think you might have heard God Save the King on GBNews earlier this morning. Because it's his birthday. I don't know why we didn't sing him happy birthday.
Well, quite. Tanya's got an excellent voice.
Do you think they sing happy birthday to him at the palace?
I think they do.
And he's going to get a phone call, we think, today from Prince Harry. He must be thrilled. So we're doing the countdown now. It's about 10 seconds now, so you're going to hear 41-gun salute to Her Majesty the King. We're going to cross over now to Green Park and we'll have a listen. Which will carry on, and we'll get another one at 1 o'clock. So thank you for joining us. We've come to the end of our show.
That's right. We'll be back with Britain's Newsroom tomorrow at 9:30. Up next is GB News Live with Emily Carver and Pip Thompson. But here is your news.